Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the program. It's the Jeff Gerstmann Show. It's the middle of March, and I'm your host for this week's installment of the program, Jeff Gerstmann, here to talk video games with you this week. I'm going to raise my microphone up so I don't have to hunch over quite as much. It seems like this is not any better. This is not any better. I got to tear this whole thing apart, put it all back together. I think that's the only solution to it, to get everything right. Take this chair, set it on fire, roll it down the street, get a new chair, so on and so forth. How's everybody doing? It's been a, oh man, I got sucked into some games this week a little bit. We'll get into those, of course. The news is getting to be there are just times like this, man. I'm putting together the news stories for the week, and I do that kind of over the course of the week. Like when I see something, I go like, oh yeah, I'll throw that into the thing and then talk about it on Tuesday. And news lately has just been a bummer. Obviously, I mean, like all just the layoffs and just everything else that's happening. Just these stories are just like crazy in some cases. And there's some that I didn't even take. There's some that I'm just like, all right, well, hey, listen, maybe this isn't. Maybe this one isn't the going to make the cut or whatever. But there's more that I just didn't even pull in. Because I don't have anything to say about payday, really, stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know, man. We'll get into the news. We'll get into there's some new studio getting announced, and some other studios getting shut down. When one door closes, when another, and I don't know. I had to run out this morning to run some errands before the show, and so I found myself at the gas station. Normally I go to a 7-Eleven for my drinks, and the gas station has a different selection, which is, they have a little bit more Rockstar than the 7-Eleven. I feel like Rockstar has been disappearing off shelves. When I went there, they had a little bit more there, but they also had these big cans of Celsius. I don't know that I've tried much Celsius, so I figured I would try one of those. The only Celsius on the list here, we have green apple cherry, sparkling orange, tropical vibe, and Arctic vibe. And those are all small cans. I think this is the first big can. The first big can Celsius I've seen. 270 milligrams of caffeine, which is a substantial amount. I don't know why you don't go the full 300 at that point, but this is Celsius Blue Crush, which it says is a sparkling blue raspberry. Oh, sparkling. I don't really like the sparkling drinks all that much, but let's try this real quick before we get into the rest of the show. Smells like a blue raspberry. Smells like you would think. Oh, this doesn't really taste like a sparkling drink. To its credit, the flavor is a little more full-bodied than that. Sparkling usually means like, hey, it's going to be a weak flavor because it's like sparkling water. This is decent. It tastes chalky. It tastes, yeah. It tastes like someone dissolved something in this. It tastes like a drink that you poured a powder into and then stirred it up. Like it's got that kind of finish, which is not uncommon for a lot of these drinks. But yeah, it's kind of a chalky finish. The flavor's okay. It's not a super strong. It's not overly sweet. It's certainly not the best raspberry drink on the list, if I had to guess. But yeah, let's throw it on the list. Celsius Blue Crush. Let's get the list up on the stream here so you can see it. We have 160 drinks on the list here. Oops, did I mess this up? Notion is bad software. I'm increasingly of the opinion that Notion is like actually bad, actually. And not just because of all the AI crap that they keep throwing into it. Like, hey, do you want to ask us a question about this page? Motherfucker, I wrote the page. I don't need to fucking ask him, what's this page say? Shut the fuck up. Leave me alone. And so Notion has like paid tiers of service or whatever. I'm on the free tier because I'm the only person using it generally, and I don't need the features that they offer for the paid plans. Except one of the options that shows up in the paid plans is the option to turn off all the AI shit. And so I guess if you're on the free tier, I'm like Googling around trying to figure it out, which is its own nightmare these days. And it's like, oh, if you email them, they'll turn it off. Like, fucking great. So I got to email someone and be like, turn this shit off, or just use something else. I'm increasingly leaning in the direction of using something else. This is, you know what? I will say, after not drinking a sip of this for a little bit and sitting with this for a little bit, the chalky aftertaste gets way worse. Like the back of my tongue is like changing. There's a chemical smorgasbord all up on my tongue that is unpleasant. Unpleasant. It's like, it's not the taste. Like, you ever lick a battery? It's not the taste of licking a battery, but it's the feel of licking a battery. It's that's gross. Wah. Gross. I don't. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. This is. And further sips are not washing away the poison feel on my tongue. Yeah. It's certainly not as sharp as licking a Switch cartridge or something like that, but it's like not entirely dissimilar. That's gonna impact its rating, I'm afraid. This is worse than the standard Faxicandi booster. This is below the Zoa line. The gas station had ads in place to say like, hey, we got 2 for 1 on Zoa, but I didn't see any Zoa anywhere. So I don't know if those are old ads or what's going on, but it's worse than Bang Miami Cola, which is not a good drink, but I did drink a case of it. But it's right in here. Oh my God, my mouth. This is I'm increasingly surprised by the flavor of this beverage the longer I sit with it. That's not good. That's not good. It's like an onset of some kind of mouth badness. It's a technical term. Yeah, that's unpleasant. All right. Most of these other drinks, while some of them are bad, are not unpleasant, I would call them. And so we're going to go here with this. Celsius seems to be on the rise, or rather like quite popular. Like there's a lot of shelf space devoted to it. I don't find it to be especially great. So Celsius is our new number. Celsius Blue Crush is our new number 132. Congratulations. Yuck. I feel like I need to drink this whole thing to like chase away the bad feelings for as long as possible, which is really how all energy drinks work if you think about it. But this one is a little more direct. All right, I'm gonna go refill. I'm gonna go get some water. And I'm going to take a quick break here to go get some water, and we'll be right back after this. Did you know that your temperature at night can have one of the greatest impacts on your sleep quality? If you wake up too hot or too cold, you have to check out Miracle Made's bed sheets. Inspired by NASA, Miracle Made uses silver-infused fabrics and makes temperature-regulating bedding so you can sleep at the perfect temperature all night long. You know what it's like to not sleep at the perfect temperature all night. You know, you wake up, what do you wake up sweaty? You wake up cold. You sweat at some point during the night, and then it gets cold, and so you wake up wet and cold, like the worst combination. I've got Miracle Made sheets on my bed right now. Right now, as I'm speaking into this microphone, as I live and breathe, I have these sheets on my bed to regulate that temperature, and it's been great. You know, keeps me warm when I need to be warm. It keeps everything where it needs to be, and that's been fantastic. And hey, results in better quality sleep. But that's not all that Miracle Made sheets can do. This silver infusion, you know, this silver up in the fabric, that means that they can prevent up to 99.7% of bacterial growth, leaving them to stay cleaner and fresher 3 times longer than other sheets. Keeps the stink out of them, which is handy. You know, and because of that, you know, you don't have to wash them quite as often, so you're not lugging bedding back and forth to the laundry room over and over again. You know, you can kind of save a trip a little bit, wash them a little bit less frequently, and all of that stuff, and that saves a little money, saves a little hassle. And that's been very handy as well. You know, none of this would matter, though, if these sheets were just rough sandpaper, whatever. But you're in luck because Miracle Made's sheets are luxuriously comfortable. Without the high price tag of other luxury brands, they feel as nice, if not nicer, than sheets used by some 5-star hotels. So stop sleeping on bacteria. That'll clog your pores up. You can have breakouts, acne, all of this. Sleep clean with Miracle. Go to trymiracle.com/Jeff to try Miracle Made sheets today. And whether you're buying them for yourself or as a gift for a loved one, if you order today, you can save over 40%. And if you use that promo code Jeff at checkout, you'll get 3 free towels and save an extra 20%. My man. Miracle is so confident in their product, it's backed with a 30-day money-back guarantee. So if you aren't 100% satisfied, you will get a full refund. Upgrade your sleep with Miracle Made. Go to trymiracle.com/Jeff and use the code Jeff to claim your free 3-piece towel set and save over 40% off. Man, that's crazy. Crazy. Again, that's trymiracle.com/Jeff to treat yourself. Thank you to Miracle Made for sponsoring the episode. And we're back. Hi. That Contra game came out this morning. Was it the Contra Operation Galuga, which is like Galaga but with a U, I guess, but not. I mean, that's not. I don't think that's not a reference or something like that. But yes, there's a new Contra game out today. I'm looking at a thing here because when I launched it this morning, it popped up a thing that was like, you linked your save data, and I'm like, what are you fucking talking about? There's a thing on Steam here that says, okay, you'll receive a bonus in the game for the following titles you own. If you own Contra Anniversary Collection, you will get Contra original music that you can use in the arcade mode or the challenge mode. If you own Castlevania Anniversary Collection, you will get the Vania Mix, which has the first 3 Castlevania games. Which, okay, if you want to play Contra to Castlevania music like some kind of fucking twisted sicko, I guess you could do that. The Arcade Classics Anniversary Collection will get you a Konamix, music from previous Konami titles. They don't get specific with that. I don't know. This game, playing through the first level and kind of, getting into it a little bit, what do you want out of a new Contra game? This is the thought I had coming out of playing this was, okay, this doesn't seem like I'm looking for So it's very the first level of it is very much like, hey, we're just gonna kind of recreate the general setting and general type of layout of the first level of Contra, and then there's going to be kind of a tutorial here that will show you like, hey, you can carry two weapons at the same time and toggle between them. You can double jump. You can do kind of a dash, though they don't really have a great. The dash seems terrible. I don't know. And then if you pull the left trigger, you can like basically blow up your gun for something like an overdrive special attack or something like that. That doesn't seem doesn't seem super effective. I pulled the trigger and it didn't seem like anything happened. But my weapon blew up and it was like, okay, you did the thing. Like, oh, what did I do here? And so they have that, it's kind of like their take on the jungle level, and it ends with, a variation of the kind of end of the first level of Contra with the big wall of guys, shooting at you and the thing, like the little base thing. Way Forward made this. There's, like at the beginning of the game, there's kind of a bunch of dialogue about what's going on, and, your two Contra guys are being called into... There's been a lot of Contra games, and maybe I'm just not. Maybe the answer is I'm just not that into Contra. Like, I would consider myself a fan of Contra. Like, I love Contra. I love Super C, the arcade game. I think that, or Super Contra in the arcade, I suppose, not just Super C. But Super C was good as well. I think that Contra on the Super Nintendo is amazing. I think that's a hell of a game. Contra Hardcore, like some of the other stuff, basically like those first three games, I think are, let's call it sacrosanct. There's a canon there. Everything past that, not to say that they're bad games, they're just different games. Like that Genesis game, people love that fucking game. I think it's cool. My brain does not connect it to the other Contra games. Contra Hardcore is a great, cool game, but like it's just sort of its own thing at that point. The different characters, the stuff they do there is just a different thing, And then there's like the PS2 and like there was like a dark period there, like where they were making some pretty questionable fucking Contra games. And it's been really hit and miss since then, to the point where it's just like now there's such a distance between every Contra game that it seems like all of them are kind of trying to do the same thing of like, hey man, remember Contra? You like that, right? And then they kind of put their own spin on it in different ways. But it became this nostalgia play. This one feels like the most naked one of them all. In terms of just like, this first level is just like, yeah, we kind of, hey, the fucking mech thing is going to appear and, there's guys to shoot and there's bridges. Only in this one, the bridges don't blow up. And you're like, what? You flipped it on its head. Crazy. But there's a little bit of, and they also try to make it kind of, I don't know. Some games have tried to be a little tongue in cheek with it, I suppose. In this one, there's a guy, and this is a dumb thing to rub me the wrong way, but that's just me. There's a bunch of characters on your radio talking as you're landing on the island to figure out, like, what's this Red Falcon? What is Red Falcon? What's going on? Well, we don't know what Red Falcon is. Which, okay, is this just a retelling of the... I guess the other thing is that it abbreviates to Contra OG, so I don't know if they're trying to, like, if this is them retelling the original Contra or whatever the fuck the deal is. But if they, and I assume they intended that, the term OG is so dumb. It's so fucking dumb. Especially here in 2024. OG. Come on. This is the original gangsta version of Contra. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? Oh, this Contra is gangsta checking him. Like, oh, okay, great. That's not a thing either. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked on top of sidetracks. There's a guy in the intro to the game and he's like a arms dealer. He's like he's your gun guy or something. He just has like a couple of lines of dialogue where he's just like, they're doing the thing, and he's like, but his name is Henriksen, and then it just says Lance at my company Henriksen Industries, and it's this weird, like, he hits the Henriksen Industries in a way that like they want you to know that they named him that on purpose, and it's just stupid. I don't know, man. It's just like, all right, whatever. Again, it's such a non-thing, but like it's just like right out of the gate, there was something before I even controlled the game that I was just like, you guys, this is stupid. You get on the ground and you run to the right and you shoot your guns, and they give you a spread gun, and you do the Contra thing. It's a lot like Contra. You can only aim in the like 8 directions. It's not full analog aiming from the looks of things, unless there are some control settings, but out of the gate, it's not analog movement. You can use the analog stick if you like, but your Contra man will only run at 1 speed. You can it has aim lock, so you can pull down the trigger and lock yourself in place so that you can aim all over without moving, but again, that is only an 8-way kind of thing, and the control setting says that is 360 aim. So I don't, someone said there's an option, but I don't know if that option actually does. Like the default option says 360 aiming, and it is 8-way aiming. So I don't know, but I'll have to spend some more time with it. It could have that in there, but like that, it would be weird if it had that in there, because like clearly the game is designed around this idea of 8-way aiming, and if you could just aim wherever, that would be weird. But I don't know. The right stick didn't do anything when I played it, so I don't know. So it feels like very much like they are trying to make a new old Contra game, very, very directly. And I don't know, man. A lot of that comes down to, I think for people, that's going to come down to price and the overall quality of the experience. So, I haven't finished it or anything like that, but I just kind of messed with it this morning. But it's $40 or $36 right now on Steam with its 10% discount. But and when I launched it, I got really scared there out of the gate, because when I first launched it, it said like, as it was like registering that I owned other games that Konami published on Steam or something, it was like, you linked your save data. Here's 1,000 credits. I'm like, oh no, are you like going to sell credits? What do you, what are we doing here? But you earn credits for playing the game. And, and then there's a shop that shows up between levels. You can level up the guns by, if you collect the spread icon twice, it will level up spread to level 2, and then it will have slightly more bullets in it. You know what I mean? I don't know, playing through that first level, I was like, oh, you kind of, okay, this is like sort of your twist on the first level of Contra, and like, the boss fight went some places, sort of. But I don't know if I am looking for that. And and it got me thinking, like, again, as someone who would go like, oh, I like Contra. Like, what would I actually want out of a Contra game? And I think the answer is I don't need more Contra games. They made the ones I like, and maybe that's just like the pain of nostalgia and the way that this works or whatever. But I don't think I need them to keep remaking the first level of Contra anymore. I don't think I need them to go like, hey man, you like Contra, don't you? I don't know. I just don't know that I don't know that I need that. I don't know that I need a new game that is playing off of nostalgia in a world where those games are so readily available. It's like, oh, if I wanted to experience the nostalgia of Contra, I could go play Contra. Maybe you've heard of it. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think it just seems like a little hit and miss. There'll probably be some people that end up digging it, but it's I don't know. It feels very like I said, it feels very much like not what I'm looking for out of a video game at this point. So yeah, So that's out there. I'll check it out in more depth. We'll take a look at it. We'll probably take a look at it tomorrow, among other things. Speaking of other things, that other thing. Well, I have also been playing something that I can't talk about until tomorrow, but I have also spent a significant chunk of time with a game called 64. It is not an idle game. It is more of it is somewhere between an idle game and a factory kind of like it's not a full-on Factorio or something like that, but it is about you accumulating resources and spending those resources to build more things. Basically, you're just given this big white play field, and there's a digging apparatus in the center of it. And it digs up. When you activate the apparatus, these big black cubes come out of the ground, boom, and shift into place. And then you click on the cubes to blow them up, and then you get, the resources of the cubes. And eventually, as you dig deeper and deeper, the cubes change color because you're getting different resources out of them, and you're using mixes of these resources to buy things to kind of expand your operation. So that'll be like, hey, put a thing next to your drill thing, and then any of the cubes that get sucked up faster, or they take fewer clicks to blow up, and eventually you are, of course, deploying things that click on them for you, and so you're plopping down a thing that will start to destroy the cubes without your input. And so it becomes about, but all of it works. All of these devices either work at the things immediately adjacent to them or in some kind of set radius. And so it becomes very much about like, what is the optimal way to lay out these machines in order to make sure that there are still cubes coming out of the ground, because you haven't, if you surround your digging thing with machines, then there's no room for the cubes to pop up anymore. So you need to determine like, okay, what mix of automation versus manual input do I need here to, because the more machines I put, the easier it is, but also fewer cubes are popping up. So those cubes better be drawn out of the ground even faster and blown up even faster to account for fewer of them coming up. And then eventually you get to a point where you can buy another digging machine and duplicate that entire operation, or build a different version of it, or, like a more, you eventually get the ability to recycle your buildings, so you can kind of wipe the slate clean and start over when you realize like, oh geez, I need to plop this machine here, this pulverizer here, and this here, and to get everything in the right configuration to work the way you want it to work. And then of course, after you do that for a good long time, you dig deep enough to start hitting a different mineral, which triggers another tier of upgrade buildings. And then you have to look at that and go like, oh man, now these things work at an even greater radius. And so now I even have to, I can completely rethink this entire build. Like what I'm doing now is bullshit compared to what I could be doing if I wipe all of this out and redo it. And so that's the point I'm at right now, where I am using kind of my early game buildings and starting to replace them in ways that make me realize that like this is not the most efficient way to set up this operation. And so I need to wipe it away. And so, but you are also have to fuel the machines. And so that's why it's not really an idle game. It's not something you walk away from, because all of the machines also take resources to run. And so you're constantly like, as they are burning through those resources, you are looking for the ones that are out of juice and clicking on them to put more cubes into, like, this one needs a gold cube. I click on it, then the gold cube flies over, it goes into the machine, and then it blows up more cubes. And so you are kind of constantly trying to expand your operation, trying to keep your operation running different machines in the corner, because they're converting resources to different resources at various ratios. And so, you know, it is not a full-on math problem. Like, you know, it's not that, it ain't that deep. Like, it doesn't feel like a game where you can get yourself into trouble and be like, I squandered all my resources, I completely fucked this up. But you know, like all of the conversions seem to work out in your favor just enough to where, you know, you're not going to have to like, oh, I converted all my blues into golds and now I'm screwed. Or, you know, you can always get more blues. It just might take some time. And it's pretty engaging. It's got a very nice look to it, to the point where I think the interface actually is bad in some situations. There are upgrades you buy to better point out when machines are out of juice, so when you need to fill them back up again. But it's not as like clear as I wish it was. It's a very small, very, very designery kind of interface. And meanwhile, the list of things that you're buying, the upgrade building stuff, is this long, unwieldy scroll list off to the right. You're just like, okay, what am I, I need to scroll down to this. And like, you can't pin a thing that you're trying to build and keep that on the screen as you scroll around to other stuff. Like that interface is, I think, is super bad. From a usability perspective, it looks nice. Like, it's a very nice looking game. Why is it called 64? It's 64 spelled out, by the way, if you're looking for it on Steam. I believe it's called 64 because each one of the black cubes disintegrates into 64 tiny cubes. So you're kind of getting, you know, that number of resources out of it, and so on and so forth. And then there's like a little bit of narrative that happens down in the corner that is like actually very functional because it is part tutorial. Like, it's not immediately clear what some of the machines do and how they do it. But in this kind of back and forth conversation that's happening down in the corner, that is engaging enough to where I'm, you know, curious to see where it all goes. It'll kind of fill you in. I'm like, okay, I'm lost here. I'm not really sure why I would use this or what this does or whatever. And then it'll kind of point you in the right direction at times. But it's pretty neat. It doesn't seem like it's going to be the longest experience. I've seen people describe it as like 10 to 20 hours or something like that, depending on how efficient you're building your setup, I guess, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's neat. It's neat. Give it a look. You know, if it's very much a very particular style of game. Like, me saying give it a look is not saying this is a great game for everyone, or, you know, anything like that. It's cool, but it's a very particular sort of thing. With that, why don't we get into the news? MultiVersus is on its way back. This is they posted they woke up their Twitter account last week, and so I think, you know, it's pretty obvious that they were getting ready to make some sort of announcement. They have come out and said it. The game will go back into service in May 28th. Is the current plan. They took it offline in June of last year. If you remember correctly, they launched MultiVersus as like a open beta, like a public beta is what they referred to it as. And like, hey, if you buy, I think it was one of those things where they're like, hey, if you buy something, you can play it early, and then eventually it's going to be free to play for everyone. And then they did that. And it was up for a while, and then they shut it down. And the shutdown notice was very much like, thank you for playing in our beta. We got a lot of great data, and we'll be back next. You know, like they it was like the game ran for a while, took players' money. They sold stuff, and then we're like, all right, thanks. This has been great. We learned a lot, and we're turning it off now. And it's like, that's fucking terrible. So when they did turn it off, what they did turn off is their servers. You could still get in and play the game offline and do local versus and all of this other stuff. But like, the game like had a stronger launch than I guess you would have thought for like this style of like platform fighting game. People seemed to generally like it, but running it as a live service game and all of the other stuff, like it just seemed like they hit a wall where like they were releasing like, you know, LeBron James went into the game and they were like, this character's in beta. I'm like, okay, you're still taking money for this stuff. This is crazy that you're calling it this. And, but it was actually, I kind of got a little bit into it for a while, but yeah, just, you know, they were like the level of updates seemed like it just immediately fell off. It seemed like they were having trouble with just getting characters out the door, getting characters right. There was netcode stuff that people were complaining about and so on and so forth. This is the, and if you don't remember, like this is the game that was all of the Warner Brothers IP characters. So it was like, here's LeBron James, your favorite Warner brother, along with Shaggy, not Shaggy 2 Dope, Shaggy, whatever the fuck his name is. He does have a last name. I forget what Shaggy's last name is, but Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. And there were other characters in that game as well, but I super cannot remember any other. Shaggy was in it. LeBron James was in it. There was a bunch of others. Right. There was like a cartoon version of some lady from Game of Thrones in it. Right. Yes. Apparently Batman was in it. All right. Yeah. Batman was in it. All right. You could tell it really left a lasting impression, but I did enjoy the game kind of out of the gate a little bit. More so than the average platform fighter. More so than that Nickelodeon game and a lot of other stuff. So, at the time, I remember thinking that it was like them shutting down the game is really crazy, but also with the level of updates and the cadence of the updates and kind of the way they framed it when they were shutting it down, like it had this acknowledgement of just like, we can't fix this game while we're also running this game. Which is the, you know, when you're doing this kind of live service, you know, or you're doing a game that's going to have scheduled updates and all of this other shit, and your netcode's not right, and you got this and you got that, and you're not going to be able to scale up to be this massive team that's going to be able to address everything at once. You're going to have to pick your shots, and as a result, the player base dwindled because players were impatient. Players were tired of waiting for the game to, you know, run properly or have characters that were properly balanced and everything else. And so, you know, it was this kind of bold, it was kind of this like bold move on their part. I do think it's like the idea that they took a bunch of money and then ran away for almost a year to fix the game is let's call it less than ideal. I don't think that they were like trying to steal the money or anything like that, but you know, but at the same time, it's a bad situation. Calling it a beta and then being like, okay, well, thanks for the this is the end of our beta. I think is crazy. But also that game needed work clearly. And now I'm curious to see if the game will have gotten the work it needed. They have moved it over to Unreal Engine 5 and rebuilt it, which, according to Polygon, who, you know, I guess is, you know, they took a look at the press release from the looks of it. I have the press release somewhere, but anyway. They say it will improve the look of the game. They've also rebuilt the game from the ground up to support new netcode. And the CEO of the developer says that players can expect pinpoint accuracy and consistent game performance no matter what platform you're playing on. So, that's all stuff the game needed. So, that's not again, this all sounds all right. For a game that people did like for a little bit there out of the gate, that I think that lines up with, generally speaking, what people thought the game really needed. And so they are also adding some kind of new PvE mode that will give players rewards. This game, you know, like it was a game where they changed the leveling curve midway through to make it take longer to level up because players were leveling up the characters and unlocking stuff too quickly and everything. So it was just like a bunch of decisions they did not know were bad decisions until they let it out in the wild, and then like, oh, fuck. So, I'm curious to see how this goes, because I can't think of a situation like this in games, you know, where a game ran for a good chunk of time and then they literally pulled the plug on it to bring it back later. Normally when games like this get shut down, they're done. And even when they shut it down, I think that, you know, I was just like, man, we should be taking odds on whether this will ever actually come back, or if it's just gone for good, especially because it's a fucking Warner Brothers game. And think about what Warner Brothers has become known for in the past year that this game has been offline. They've become known for shutting shit down and running away from it for tax purposes. They have become the faces of, we're not going to put that out because it would make us more money to not do it. The worst. Like, I'm not even talking about video games. I'm talking about the larger Warner Brothers strategy of, oh yeah, that movie we shot, fuck it, dude. We'll make more money on a tax write-off than we will selling it to somebody else. And also, if we sell it to somebody else and it does well, that will make us look bad. So we're definitely not going to sell this movie to anyone else either. Which is as someone who once tried to engage in talks to acquire a website from a large media company, and got back the response of, oh, the company never sells anything because if it goes off and it's successful without them, it makes them look bad. I was like, okay. I get it. Like, that's fucking gross and disgusting. But yeah, why do anything smarter or better now, right? Yeah, media companies, they're great. They're all really great. They're all in the business of making media and making it great. And they're in the business of quality, certainly. They're interested in making high quality things, and that's why the things they own are well supported and they will have some new characters later this year. They're not really tipping their hand on that just yet. Marvin the Martian was the last character added to the game. And I'm very curious about this. Like I said, this seems like pretty unprecedented. I maybe there's another example of this, but I cannot immediately think of one where they literally like shut the thing down and said, yeah, we'll bring it back later. And so I'm curious to see if players come back. I'm curious to see if this does anything for them. If, you know, like I'm sure that there's stuff like, you know, there's a curiosity factor with the whole nature of this that I'm sure will bring some players back, and players who did spend money, I'm sure will definitely be like, all right, what the fuck have you been doing all this time? Because they launched with a buttload of microtransaction shit, costumes and all this other stuff. There was like a couple $100 worth of things you could have bought in that game. In addition to, you know, if you bought the expensive version of the game, it came with a bunch of character tokens to unlock new characters. And then they never released enough characters for you to use all of those tokens. So I think when I launch it, I will still have enough tokens to unlock 17 characters or some insane thing. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. New netcode is good. That it definitely needs that. It definitely needed that. So if they've overhauled all of that, that's fantastic. And we'll see what else they do from here. Yeah, I don't know. Meanwhile, on the other side of Warner Brothers, this is another story coming from Polygon's Michael McWhorter. Developers who worked with Adult Swim games have been getting notifications from their contacts at what's left of Adult Swim games to say, we are going to delete your game from Steam and other platforms. You know, the thing that Warner Brothers does. Now they're going to do it to a bunch of games. The phrasing that Warner, I guess, is using in some of their talks with the developers are retiring. And so some of the games that have some of the developers that have been contacted are we'll see. We have small radios, big televisions. Adult Swim published a handful of games. Like they I feel like they laid off most of their people kind of a while ago. Like the Adult Swim thing kind of went away a while ago, but there was a time there when there was a cool little team at Adult Swim Games that was, you know, publishing. They published Glitterbitten Grove, for example. A hell of a video game. And so what do we got here? Small radios, big televisions, Sound Dodger Plus. Fist Puncher from Team 2-Bit. And basically, like, you know, instead of transferring the rights, so, you know, like Steam as a process, and this article actually turned me on to this. I did not know. I assumed there was something. Steam has a process where you can transfer ownership of a game from one entity to another. So if your publisher is going under and or a deal is up and you're transferring rights back to the developer or whatever, one of the developers in this article describes it as like a 3-click process, and that they presented this to the person that was contacting them from Warner about this stuff. Is like, hey, if you could just transfer the rights to me, it's 3 clicks. You could just do that. Then the page could stay up and all of this other stuff. And the response they got back was like, no, we can't. No, for what do they did get logistical and resource constraints, as well as the limited capacity of our team, are the reasons given by Adult Swim Games for not transferring the rights over to this. You know, it sounds like there are not a lot of people there. It sounds like even one of the developers that is going to, you know, put their game back out, and I think even has it for free download on their page right now. And basically, like, their request is even coming down to, please remove all mention of Adult Swim games from the game completely, even the names of Adult Swim people in the credits. If you could yank them out of the credits. Yeah. The other, yes, Sound Dodger Plus says the other legal requirement for republishing the game myself is to remove any and all mention of Adult Swim games. I asked for clarification, and he even wants the credit sequence altered to remove the names of the Adult Swim games team. Which is crazy. Maybe you just move those names over to the special thanks section or something like that. And who are they to determine who you can or can't thank, I guess. But like the transfer ownership thing is a bummer, because that basically means an existing Steam page for a game will disappear and a new one will pop up. Which doesn't really sound like a big deal, and in some cases maybe it isn't, but you know, it separates achievements across 2 versions of a game. It also means that any like community written guides or any of this other stuff that's on the old page won't be on the new page, and other little weird fucking things like that are crazy. It's really this striking thing here. And some developers, as of the writing of this article, had not been yet contacted, but everyone who has an Adult Swim game is it sounds like they are basically expecting to be hearing from them soon if they haven't already. I think that's a really gross way to do it. I suspect that people affiliated with the Adult Swim Games team probably don't want to do it this way, but But if they are as much of a skeleton crew as this article seems to posit, they may not really have many options there. But they're winding it down. You know, this is there is no Adult Swim games going forward. I thought that I can't remember the last time Adult Swim published a game, because I feel like they laid off most of their people a while ago. Steam appears to be listing 32 games that are part of Adult Swim games. The last one shipped in November of 2022, and that is Ghost Song. Though Ghost Song is now listed as Humble Games on the page here. Oh, wait. Pool Panic. No, it's 2018. Yeah, Kingsway. Glittermitten Grove is listed there. Headlander is listed there. That's a Double Fine's game. But when we click on that, is that still listed as... Yeah, that is still listed with Adult Swim Games as a publisher. So we'll see what happens with that duck game. Super House of Dead Ninjas from 2013. Yeah, so it's been a bit since Adult Swim has even published anything. So I don't think there's this case of like, who would work with them in the future? It's like there is no future for Adult Swim games. Warner is probably just consolidated. Warner Brothers is so uninterested in so many different things. An indie publishing division, I'm sure, is not anything that they are at all interested in continuing to run. So we'll kind of see how that goes. But this sucks. This is, and you know, this will impact console platforms in some way, shape, or form as well. The Steam situation seems like a situation where, you know, Steam could maybe step in and say like, hey, we'll back end you into your old Steam page to make sure that the content stays there, even though, you know, they're not going to do the ownership transfer thing or whatever, unless there's some legal reason why they can't do that. But like, I wonder, is this just something where they're not going to have anyone in place to manage the relationships with the platform holders anymore? So they're just like, fuck it, we're completely divesting of any, like, we're shutting these games down because we don't want to get emails saying like, hey man, your game's on Steam and it's doing this and it's illegal and we need, you know, Warner just probably wants to just completely be done with all of that stuff as cheaply and as quickly as possible. Warner Brothers seems like a bad company. And again, I don't even really have to talk about the games division in order to make that point. You know, the things they've been doing on the movie, and, you know, like some of the stuff they've been, you know, not releasing, like this Coyote versus Acme movie that for a while it looked like they were going to maybe shop around, and then they were like, oh no, we're definitely not going to do that. That Batgirl movie that was like almost done, that they're just like, fuck it. It's crazy. But the developers of these games will, you know, presumably retain or regain rights to this stuff. So, you know, that stuff, these games won't necessarily be removed off the face of the earth. Some of them will get re-released independently or whatever. I'm guessing, but maybe not all of them. Maybe some of these developers have gone under, so maybe they just completely vanish. I don't know. We will have to see what happens. Just ridiculous. I don't know, man. Suicide Squad's been on sale lately. Speaking of Warner Brothers, I don't know that I would pay a sale price on that game either. But they have, you know, had multiple opportunities through earnings calls and whatever else to get out in front of people and say, yeah, this game's not performing very well. Like, yeah, wonder why. It could have been the rancid word of mouth coming off of it in the months leading up to its release. Could have been the part where it deserved a lot of that reaction because the game's not that good. Anyway, whatever. In cheerier news, the CEO of Electronic Arts says that 60% of development processes could be impacted by generative AI. Okay, we're going to slow this down here. Generative. It's like I keep saying genitals. Genitals AI. Generative. We're going to work it out here. Here, I need a sip of a drink here to. Oh, God, I shouldn't have drank that. Oh, no. Oh, my mouth. Oh, okay. Generative AI. There we go. This comes on the heels of EA laying off hundreds of people, 5% of their workforce. And this also came from that Morgan Stanley conference, which is, I think, the other place where someone from Warner Brothers got up and said, yeah, the Suicide Squad's not going so great. And so GameDeveloper.com has recapped aspects of that. Andrew Wilson said at this, it's the Morgan Stanley Technology, Media, and Telecom Conference. And he says, the dawn of generative AI technology is, quote, incredibly exciting and something that EA is, quote, embracing deeply. Which, of course. You can't. This is not something like this stuff is not advanced enough to where you can look at those layoffs and say, this is a other shoe dropping sort of thing necessarily. Like the layoffs is kind of a separate. Those things will eventually be related down the line, presumably, but right now, that's not really the case here. GameDeveloper.com also kind of says, like, he was asked, like, how might this impact the business? What might this do here? And their explanation here is saying that they've been using machine learning AI for a while to refine gameplay elements such as how players run inside Madden. Which, like, okay, that's like, they've had technology to, like, whether it's like tweening or whatever else to make these animations look a little bit better. I'm sure that if they want their stumbles to look more accurate and they're not going to mocap all of that stuff, like, they need to come up with some kind of algorithm that is figuring out how a person runs and the physics of a human body and how it would put a foot down here and how it would put a foot down here. Like, that's stuff that sort of tech has been making its way into games and beyond for a good long time. So it's not unheard of that stuff would be advancing. It says, but beyond that, he says, generative AI is the most exciting evolution of the tech by a fairly wide margin, and is thought about internally on 3 core vectors: efficiency, expansion, and transformation. So efficiency, you know what that means. But the quotes here are interesting. It says, like, the thing about efficiency, this is really about how do we make what we do today more efficient. Wow, bold. And for anyone who knows about our business, it's an incredibly iterative development cycle and incredibly time-consuming, which is why games are now taking 6 or 7 years to build. We've done a study across all of the processes of game development. Around 60% of all of our processes have high feasibility to be possibly impacted by generative AI. Now, an example of that might be how we build a stadium in one of our sports games. That would typically take us 6 months. This past year, it took us 6 weeks. It's not unnatural for us to believe that in the coming years, it will take 6 days. Is that up? We don't have the map on it just yet. I would tell you in the back of my mind, my orientation is how can we use generative AI to make us 30% more efficient as a company? How in 3 years from today, could we be 30% more efficient? It's a really insane, like, it's a decent little insight into the CEO level of things, of just like, we got to be 30% more efficient. What the fuck does that even mean? Do you mean spend 30% less money? Do you mean make a game 30% faster with the same resources you're using today? What do you... It's such a fucking... It's you know, and they're gonna nod their heads and go, yeah, all of them. Yeah, all of it. Yeah. I might argue that, like, and you know, again, I don't necessarily know their process, but like, okay. So it used to take them 6 months to make a stadium in a sports game. This past year, it took us 6 weeks. Okay. Also, most of those stadiums were in last year's game. So naturally, there's going to be a ramp up process at the start of a hardware generation where you're like, okay, we're going to rebuild these stadiums in 4K because we're doing it, you know, the PlayStation 5 is out now, EA's Gen 5 console. So we're going to do a lot of work here because we have to make these assets over again because things are better now. And I bet even then, they probably don't start from scratch. The Gen 5 people are confused. EA refers to the consoles as whatever number is on the PlayStation. So when they go into earnings calls and they talk about next console generations, they refer to them as like the Gen 4 consoles or the Gen 5 consoles. Which further underscores how dumb of a term that is, and anyone saying like, we're in the 9th generation is like, that is stupid too. Numbering them is pointless. There are no set lines. There's no easy math to be done here around the dumb generations. The nice thing you can say about EA's thing is at least it matches up to the numbers on the PlayStation. And so you can look at it as like, okay, modern generations, I guess, okay, sure. In a modern context, I suppose this is the 5th generation of what we think of as the modern video game console. But even that is fucking ridiculous. Anyway, so you know, obviously they're going to go in and they're going to do work, touch up work, or do, you know, in some cases meaningful work to a stadium. And some teams will change stadiums from one year to the next, and they'll be like, well, it's in the game. It says right on the thing. The guy says it. He goes, it's in the game, bitch. And you're like, oh no. That guy called me we got to spend 6 months because the man said, anyway, but I'm guessing that by the end of a generation, by the end of a console generation, the time they're spending on most stadiums, I'm going to assume is not 6 months. There'll be work they have to do to like, oh, they renovated this part of the stadium this year, and so we need a different awning here. We need that, you know, whatever it is. I'm sure that, you know, I'm not saying, what I am not saying is that they are just dragging and dropping a file from last year's game into this year's game. I'm sure that they are eyeballing it, and I'm sure that there's probably some changes they have to make every year because, you know, whatever. The idea that you would use generative AI, goddamn, to make that process suddenly take 6 days, like, okay. In most of these cases, the other thing you're doing is you are recreating a real life asset. And so you are trying to be as faithful and accurate to the real life stadium as you can, but you may have to occasionally take some artistic license because you're not going to have the license to like, oh, they got a Coke bottle out in the stands here and we don't have the Coke license, so we're going to put a generic bottle here. And maybe there would be an AI process that could come up with a fake Coke bottle, I suppose. But the idea that they're just going to like reduce it down to 6 days and all that other stuff sounds like I don't know. That sounds like a bad example, is what I would say. As a non-technical person, that doesn't sound like a great example, unless you want to end up with, bad, weird stadiums. Look at the fingers on this stadium. This stadium has 6 fingers on this hand. It's ridiculous. Anyway, it goes on here to say he feels that these AI tools will ultimately help creators more quickly achieve greatness. And where expansion is concerned, he stated that generative AI was used to increase the number of run cycles in EA Sports FC24 from 12 to 1,200. So, I don't know, 100 times the run cycles in FIFA, in soccer. Okay. Again, I think that like some of that stuff, there's been technology in place that has tried to do the like, oh, we're going to try to make this player stand up and have a human look to the way they would put a foot down here as they're staggering or stumbling or do this. Like a lot of that technology has, and obviously it's advancing all the time. So if they're rolling generative AI into it, like to me, that's just the same process they've been doing for a long time. It's just potentially getting better. Do they need more than 12 run cycles? How many more copies of the game will they sell by having 1,200 run cycles instead of 12? Not that everything has to be broken down to that, but if we're talking to the CEO here, all he cares about is that they got to 1,200 without assigning additional humans to the task, I'm sure. This is oh boy. All right. Not to just read this whole article from GameDeveloper.com, but here's the next pair. Looking beyond that, Wilson feels generative AI tools will help democratize the game industry by letting billions of players create personal content or even build their own universes within the publisher's various tech platforms. And the quote here is, all of a sudden, we are the beneficiaries of platform economics. And for me, that's a multi-billion-dollar opportunity for us in addition to what we would otherwise get out of our regular growth. Monetize the teens! We've got to monetize these teens. It's about time that everyone had a game platform. It's about time that everyone tried to turn their shit into Roblox. Do you think CEOs just like lay awake at night just tossing and turning, oh, fucking Roblox? How do I get a Roblox? I want a Roblox. If we had a Roblox, I could have another yacht. And then it ends with another quote here. Every day we read about some incredible advancement or some incredible mistake that some chatbot has made when you ask it a question. But for us as a company who basically builds our business on AI and has driven through the various incarnations of AI, we find ourselves looking at Gen AI and we're more excited now than we've ever been. So, obviously their video games have AI in them. They have for a long time. Whatever we're calling AI this year. Now it's now it's all this machine learning, large language model horse shit. And, but like the idea of taking, we basically build our business on AI is what he's saying. And it's like, yeah, okay, yeah, yes. If we're talking about the way the computer plays the football game against humans, and we're still going to call that AI while we're also calling this stuff AI, then yes. You are pioneers in the AI space. Congratulations. But it just underscores the absolute meaninglessness of the term AI at this point. Eventually, we will have to settle on new terminology for this shit. Because those things are not the same. They can be used to achieve the same goals. I mean, you could, I don't know, feed a computer every football game that's ever existed and all of that stuff if they haven't done that already. To figure out, what would this coach do on this play in this game, in this situation, 3rd and long, down by 13, fourth quarter, this much time left on the clock. What would fucking Bill Belichick's stupid ass do here? Do that. Hey, computer, do that. If they're going to use this other stuff to better figure out how to make the AI more realistic and all that other stuff, like I think all of that stuff is always improving, right? Whatever we're calling it, if we can't call it all AI now because the word AI has been broken by modern business, but all of the stuff they've been doing. My wife just walked by holding clothes, which means that one of these children has made a mess. Yeah, so I don't know. Like at the end of the day, a lot of those processes are computer generated. Let's call them, where they are trying to feed data in and get good data out, right? If all of that is AI, then none of it's AI, I guess. I don't know, man. But like the idea of like, hey, we want to have a realistic walk cycle in a game, or like, hey, rather than mocap this, we're going to use an algorithm to determine that is programmed to walk like a human and do this. Like games have been doing that forever. There's so many different, animation procedures, whether they are hand tuned or whether they are mocapped or whatever. There are so many different ways to skin that cat. And of course, yeah, some people will try to apply this generative stuff to the things they've been doing for a long time. I don't necessarily think that removes the human element from this stuff in that specific case, because you're going to have to figure out what that data is. You're going to have to tune that data. You're going to have to make sure, is that actually fun to do? The problem with a lot of these games, because like you have to appeal to a wide level of skill sets. So like, how do you dumb down the AI so it isn't too good at football for people to enjoy? And so on and so forth, right? I mean, there's a lot of elements where humans are going to have to touch that stuff. So, the idea of just like, I don't know, like this is all just like, to me, this comes across as this guy is a CEO on stage at some kind of investor focused thing, at some kind of financial conference run by Morgan fucking Stanley. And he is just kind of pulling shit out of his ass that makes it sound like, well, we're on top of that, Don. Oh yeah, no, we got Yes, AI, we're all over it. We've been done doing it. We've been making football games with AI in it since the 80s. You're like, yeah, okay, sure. 30% more efficient. Like, all right, none of that is real. Because a lot of the tools that, and some of this stuff will get there and some of it probably won't. But yes, eventually there will be better, like even without all of the LLM shit going around, the tools are always getting better. But also the target keeps moving further and further out, right? It's kind of the way that this business has always been, is at some point you're like, oh, okay, now we've got a PlayStation 5. The CPU has this much space in it for thinking. The GPU can throw this many polygons on screen. Make your football game on it. And then a bunch of people in Florida make their football game on it. And then they spend the next 5 years getting better at making it on that specific tier of hardware. And then it pushes out again. And then they go, fuck, all right. Well, this is really exciting. All these new tools, all this other stuff. Like in some ways, it makes it even easier. Like the engines are always getting better, and EA always uses its own engines, so it's a little more it's a little more difficult to understand how much progress EA makes on the engine front. Like, and how much better is Frostbite now than it was years ago? I can tell you it is a lot better than when it started, because when everyone had to start using Frostbite, the level of complaints I heard out of people on so many different teams at EA that were like, this engine is built specifically to run Battlefield. We have to make a driving game. We have to stream in assets and textures at a much higher rate than this engine was ever built to do. And then you've got some other team somewhere else that's just like, I don't know, man. Like we're basically like, you know, Madden takes place inside a stadium in the middle of a big Battlefield map now, but I don't know, we're getting there. And you know, I think the sports teams kind of turned the corner on it a little bit faster than some of the other ones, but yeah, so my point is like I don't, you know, when you think about the Unreal Engine, like the Unreal Engine is everywhere, right? Like so many different people are using it that it's easy to hear about like, oh, well 5.1 shipped with this and now this is easier, and you know, the most important skill in video games these days seems to be being able to do fucking blueprints. And so you know, it's a lot easier to hear about the updated details in UE5 and some of the updates they've made to UE5 since they rolled it out and all that other stuff. EA doesn't have a good reason to publicly talk about enhancements to the Frostbite engine or any of their other tooling, unless it's in service of them promoting a game. So we just don't hear about that stuff specifically. But I'm fairly certain Frostbite has gotten at least a little bit easier to work with in the time since it rolled out. But all the tools are always getting better, right? In theory. So I don't know. Like the game development, like I feel like this part of this process is always happening, right? There's always like, we've got to get better at these tools. We've got to build better tools that let us make this level of asset in less time, because now we've got to make all this photorealistic 4K fucking horseshit. It was like the Call of Duty stuff when they overhauled their tech for the first Modern Warfare reboot. I went to Infinity Ward and saw the game, and they did a tech walkthrough and said like, here's some of the stuff we're doing. It was kind of like the first time I'd ever really had, and you know, the technology had existed before this. But it was kind of like the first time I'd had like a slow walkthrough of just like, yeah, here's, you know, we're using photogrammetry. We're doing, you know, look at this rock. It was the first time I had the like, check out this fucking rock and how realistic this rock in this map looks. That's because we can take photos and we can do this. This rock took way less time to make than it would have on the previous tech, because people would have had to sit there and fuck with this rock for a really long fucking time. And now we can import the pictures of these rocks and do, like, you know, the process had improved. Basically, you know, the tools had become better so that they can spend less time on individual rocks. And that's my way. You're like, that sounds ridiculous, right? You're like, who would do that? But like, that's games. Like, games are fucking crazy. Like, people spend all this fucking time on a fucking rock. Like, at some point, why? Can we get a rock out of the asset store? Can I buy a rock for $12 out of the asset store and just use that rock? And we can all use the same rock. The rocks are good anyway, man. No, and the answer is no, because eventually people go like, oh, those are flipped assets. Those rocks are from the asset store. I'm mad about it and I'm boycotting this game because of the rocks or whatever. But point being, the impression I get is that the tools are always getting better, and you know, people have to fucking continue to get better at working with them. And so there are always going to be efficiencies that come from better tools and better technology. I guess my thing is, you know, when we look at where it is right now, a lot of the generative AI doesn't necessarily seem like better technology. It's not necessarily like a direct, there's not a direct link to that stuff and a lot of these other things that have been used in game development. It's kind of its own thing. And that's why when they compare it to just like, AI, we build our business on AI. It's a weird comparison. Because this current kind of buzzwordy modern AI shit is such a different weird thing. And I'm sure that there's probably some use for that technology in game development somewhere, right? I mean, you know, the way that I think the short versions of this that we look at are always things like versions of what we see out there in the open source tools that are available to us. And so that's stuff like, oh, well, you could always generate voice. You could always, you could always do a voice clone of a thing and use it to generate infinite voices and not have to voice all these lines, which then you're like, okay, are we eliminating voice actors? Because that's a terrible fucking outcome. We don't want that. And no one is really saying, hey, we're going to do that, mostly because they don't want the hate right now. But I'm sure that there are developers that are thinking about ways they can implement that stuff. There was a story going around that the voice actors are, that there's kind of, it was presented as like there's 50-50 odds as to whether SAG is going to strike on the video game industry. And a lot of it is coming down to AI and the rules around what they can and can't do with your voice after you record it for them. But, you know, there's also situations where it's like, okay, and some of it is just like, I don't know, like some of this is stuff that's already being done. So I don't know how much of an improvement it really is. Like, you know, can this technology, can the current form of AI, can you feed it footage or data or whatever of football men running and doing football man things and moving their hands and doing, you know, the way a human being does? And does that then spit out a bunch of realistic animations on the other side of that? Like, my gut says no. Could you use that to benefit that existing process? Potentially. But to act like that this is just going to like modify this process so thoroughly that you're just like, oh, we just clicked a button and it spit out all the football man animations and we don't need any humans anymore to touch this. Like, that's just not... I don't believe that that is where this stuff is necessarily going to be heading in the near term. In a way that will be like so hands off that you're like, yes, this... all of these millions of dollars we're spending on this stuff, we're totally comfortable just pushing this button and letting the computer determine it. Like, I feel like the first company to do that on a major project is going to really, really fuck themselves over and put themselves in a real tight spot where they're just like, we laid everybody off and then pushed all the computer buttons and then what it gave us back is not usable. Oh, no. And then we had to spend a bunch of money having humans come in and fix it all. And that turned out to cost us even more money. Shit. Really should have thought this through. And then the CEO is just like, yeah, but is it 30% more efficient? I mean, it was up until we had to go hire twice as many people to fix this fucking mess. Well, okay. Like, yeah, I don't know. It's a... We'll see where it all goes, right? I mean, I can't just sit here and predict that it's definitely going to go that way or whatever else. And like I said, I do think that there are probably specific situations where this generation of AI tools can be used in a way that benefits game developers without it being like, look at this dog shit AI art, you know, in ways that actually do kind of improve some processes. But like, again, that's all technology. That's all tools. That's not just, you know, the latest buzzword bullshit doesn't really impact that one way or the other, because there's always going to be another version of Speed Tree that either makes the trees a little bit faster or makes the trees look a little bit better or gives you access to a whole new tree. Speed Tree 6, how many trees you got now? We got 23 trees. We had 22 in the last revision. We have added a 23rd tree. You click this button, you're going to see some serious fucking trees. You know, and Speed Tree is something that, you know, I assume it still is getting used out there. But, you know, it's at the time when Speed Tree was showing up in a lot of games across the 360 and everything else, like, you talk to developers about it, because I took a weird interest in Speed Tree for a brief period of time because it was very funny to see Speed Tree at GDC that year. But then you talk to developers and they're like, no, dude, Speed Tree is fucking sick. And it was a lot of this type of talk, but in a very real way. It was like, no, dude, you don't understand the amount of time we used to have to spend making trees or just like settling for really fucking shitty trees in a game. The number of times, you know, the time spent on generating trees thanks to Speed Tree. Like, tools get better. There's middleware out there for everything. And so some version of this shit will eventually fit into that mold. But to have CEOs look at that and go like, we're going to get more efficient. Like, CEOs are always trying to get more efficient. They're always trying to fucking find ways to figure all that shit out. I have not launched Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, but Mord Fustang, hi, also hello, says that the Speed Tree logo is on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth on PS5. So Speed Tree, still getting it done. Still making it happen. Yeah, man. Middleware, the quest for efficiency did not start here. It will not end here. It has been an ongoing process. And I think you have a lot of developers that have like worked really hard on a bunch of really esoteric shit that they're probably more than happy to be like, oh, cool, I can spend way less time doing this now because the tools are better. That's just natural. That's not something that people need to be necessarily up in arms about. But yeah, I don't know. I just, when it comes to like actual creativity and actual creative endeavors, that is where this obviously becomes a totally different conversation, because then we get into like, was this trained on shit that you own, or was it trained on a bunch of stolen shit? Who is selling my data to train AI models today? I assume it's Notion. Looks like Reddit is more than happy to do that shit, whatever. Anyway. But in terms of some of those tools actually being used and the role they may play, remains to be seen how useful that stuff will actually be, or how much better those tools will be than the existing tools that are out there. Right now, it seems like, oh yeah, man, like these are way less efficient than the tools we've been using for years. We would much rather keep using this shit. And then, eventually that stuff does probably get better to the point where they could flip a switch and see how it goes. We'll see if we get there or not. So I think someone's going to push it before it's ready. I think someone's going to push their studio into AI land for for dog shit investor reasons, and just go like, oh, well, we can make this way cheaper because we replaced all our artists with, one guy who writes in gun black, covered in light blue, neon orange camouflage, sick scope, comma, realistic, comma, one barrel, and then see what comes out the other end. And then they go, cool, we're putting that in the game. I would actually like to see, in some sick way, like, okay, we took these AI models and then, just unleashed, like, what if the next Borderlands game, okay, this is actually now a good idea, because Borderlands is just the right type of fucking crazy and not, okay. What if Borderlands 4 had a fucking terminal that you could walk up to and type in prompts, and it just, like, that's the gun thing, and you're just like, gun, 9 barrels, sick scope, and have it go off and do it. I think that would be interesting. And they've already been using algorithms and stuff. Like, the one of the more interesting things about the Borderlands franchise is if you go and get a save editor, and there's a guy out there who made a series of save game editors for the Borderlands franchise, and you can go grab one of those, load it up, and look at your inventory, and you can actually see how they assemble the guns. Like the behind the scenes bit of like, this part and this part and this part and this dice roll and this is what makes a gun. And so we can iterate on that gun a ton of different ways. So like actually like digging into that and looking at how the guns are built is super fucking fascinating. And that's how they get to this point where they can say it's got 1 million guns. You know, like we've already at a point where they can, you know, they can have all those dice rolls and all other stuff. But what if you could have 40 trillion guns? And instead of coming up with these different parts and all this other stuff, you were typing into it dumb fucking AI prompts. I don't know. I think it would be interesting to see like how broken you could make the guns. Like that to me was always the interesting thing about Borderlands was like, okay, I'm going to pull this gun slot machine every time I kill a guy. There's a gun that might pop out, and they're putting clamps on it to say like, well, this guy is low level, so he should only drop guns in this range of output. But you eventually get to a point in that game where in that last one, I think it was 3, at some point they finally make good on the joke of a gun that shoots guns. And it starts shooting out guns with high rarity and you know, like they're tweaked in a way to be even weirder than the average gun, I think, because you know, it's the weird end game thing. It's the weird end game goof of the gun that shoots guns. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, yes. Perhaps let AI handle the writing in Borderlands. It couldn't do worse, right? Moving on, Deviation Games, a studio founded in 2020 and backed by PlayStation, has been shut down. They'd never shipped a game. This was founded by a couple of ex-Call of Duty people, including Jason Blundell, who left the studio in 2022, according to this Video Games Chronicle story. This one was kind of like shadowy is not the word, but because they didn't ship a game and, you know, they weren't necessarily the most public-facing studio in the world, it's not, I don't think it's immediately clear how many people were there, though they're, when they signed the deal with Sony in 2021, they had over 100 people. Oh man. VGC is really pulling it out here. There's a gamesindustry.biz article about the announcement of the studio, an announcement that they've signed a deal with PlayStation. And there's a quote in there saying like, this PlayStation deal ensured complete financial security for years and years to come. Okay. Well, so they have shut down. I assume part of that is part of the layoffs, though, because they did not have an announced game per se and everything else. Like, it's hard to, you know, maybe there were additional problems already stacked on that studio that make this make a little more sense. But because it's kind of a black box situation, we don't really know exactly what they were working on. And we don't exactly know how many people they had, but that is another sign of a PlayStation studio getting shut down. One of the founders leaving in 2022 probably did not help there, or perhaps is a symptom of larger issues there. We don't really know. Which kind of brings me to a couple of stories. IGN interviewed Peter Moore, who, you know, was the president of Sega of America. He was there when they pulled the plug on the Dreamcast. He had a pretty solid run at EA. He had a solid run at Xbox. It really seemed like, you know, when the Xbox Ascension plan was put into place and he was not going to be the guy that ran the place, he was out not long after that. Seemed like one of those type of situations. And I assume he is still involved in the soccer business. He left to go run a sports team or something. Nearly simultaneously, VentureBeat had an interview with Shawn Layden, former head of, I guess it would have been Sony Computer Entertainment America at the time. And both of these kind of former heads of console companies have takes on the modern video game industry. Okay, Inky Ghost in chat says he is not part of Liverpool FC anymore. But 4-2 in the chat says that Liverpool did become super successful under his management. So, the Peter Moore interview at IGN is interesting. I think you should go to IGN and read it. But the kind of the pull out bit that a lot of outlets are doing are when he is asked about the kind of the future of consoles. And the quote here that Video Games Chronicle pulled out as a subhead here is, I think it's a real serious question that's being asked, I'm sure, in Tokyo, in Redmond, and Kyoto as well. Basically, like, will there be another generation of consoles? Is sort of the framework here for this. Let me see if I can find the exact quote here. Couple of questions here to Peter Moore. He's asked, you mentioned that even as early as 2007 internally, you were wondering, is this the last console generation? He says, yeah, the Xbox 360 during the back end of that. You have that concern. If you were thinking then of something that launched in the mid-2000s, what does the end of the decade look like? And how long the cycles were, usually 5 or 6 years. What does it look like in 5 or 6 years? Are we going to need another? Well, the answer ultimately was yes, but the questions were being asked then. Why? Because you've got faster, cheaper broadband, more ubiquitous in just about everybody's home. I always remember this. You're looking at music and the lessons learned, and all of a sudden streaming of high-definition movies was starting to happen as we had those capabilities at home. Again, gaming wasn't immune to this. The thing that kept us going was that games were 30 gigabytes then, or 40 gigabytes, and music was 4 megabytes. And a movie you could stream, but it was linear and passive. And so, yeah, 2007, I mean, you think about it, like, you know, that's kind of the midpoint of the Xbox 360 generation. And that's when they're starting to have conversations about, like, what are we doing next? Why are we doing it? Should we do it? And so it's not, you know, it's not weird that they were asking those questions. I don't know if I agree with Peter that broadband is ubiquitous. Still, all these years later, he's talking about 2007. Like, yeah, I guess, but there's a lot of places that don't have that access. So, this feeds right into, I think, you know, again, the talk at the time when the PlayStation 4 was rolling out and the Xbox One was that a lot of the third parties were a little skittish about the console business at that point, simply because it was this feeling of like, should we be investing most of our money into console game development as we have been doing, or are we ruining our company by not pivoting to phones or pivoting? You know, it was at the time it was phones. At the time it was like, oh my God, we need to start making phone games. Why are we like, we're fucking this up? You know, and a lot of that, you know, much like a lot of the AI conversation now is investor led. At the time, there was a lot of talk about like, what's your mobile strategy from investors, from business types. That was a question I got asked a lot editorially by people running the business back at GameSpot through that time, through the mid 2000s, and like that conversation kept coming up more and more of just like, well, why aren't you reviewing phone games? And I could always kind of fall back on like, because they're free. There's no, you know, they're free and they're bite-sized. Like, our review is not going to provide a service greater than someone just downloading the game and trying it for themselves for 5 minutes. You know, like we don't have much to offer there in terms of traditional editorial coverage. And there would be people that would push on that and try to get us to do it anyway because they felt it would lead to stronger ad sales if they could approach mobile companies and be like, well, we're covering the games, you should advertise with us, as if that was going to be a thing. Also, of course, I had the experience of, covering the N-Gage and also at one point they bought a mobile, they bought a website that reviewed mobile games. This is in the pre-smartphone era. So it's like, here's a Verizon feature phone that plays blackjack. And is it a good blackjack? We're going to review this blackjack game. Like, what? Why? And that was an interesting era for phone games because that's when Doom RPG came out. And Doom RPG is a fucking awesome game. There are ports of it. You can get your hands on a version of Doom RPG that runs on phones. You should check it out if you haven't ever seen it. It's fascinating to see Doom turned into a turn-based game. But when that thing came out on phones, it was fucking crazy. So there were interesting things happening in phones. It's just a lot of that stuff was happening in Japan, and when like a full 75 to 80% of the Kingdom Hearts story is trapped on Japanese cell phones that don't exist anymore. So sorry, maybe you can watch a YouTube video. But yeah, so like I spent time kind of getting up on that business then, and seeing just how meaningless that coverage was to an audience that cared about console games. And so all of that served me very well when people were like, why aren't you reviewing iPhone games? What's your mobile strategy? What's your mobile strategy? Like, here's our mobile strategy. Fuck it. That's not to say the games are bad. That's not to say that the games are not valid or whatever, but like traditional editorial coverage of free-to-play iPhone games is not what that audience is looking for. And in fact, they will get angry if we devote time to it, which was always stupid, but it was just part of it. It's just like, hey, there's really not a lot of value we can add in that format. And I think later, we kind of, as we did more and more of it, there are certainly games on the iPhone that were worth covering, but even then it wasn't always a traditional review. It was like, hey, I'm playing this phone game. It's like a podcast conversation. Just like, hey, you should check this phone game out. I don't know. I played some of the AEW clicker game recently. It's fucking terrible. It's an awful video game. It's an awful idle game. It's from a studio that churns those games out and made them for like a bunch of different properties like The Office and Archer and Trailer Park Boys, and the art style is terrible. They make like Kenny Omega looks like he is 100,000 years old. Like just the faces in it are so fucking bad. And the Trailer Park Boys game has the same art style to it. Like whoever is doing the art for those games has a style. And I don't think that style captures wrestlers especially well. Anyway. So yeah, I don't know, man. Like this idea of the end of console generations is not new, and like this IGN interview with Peter Moore is saying, they were thinking about it in the Xbox 360 era, which is at a time when consoles felt fucking untouchable. Like, hey, well, now they're all got this internet built in and all this other stuff. This is great, and like consoles are amazing, and it makes sense because that's he gets into it in the interview, but it is this idea of just like every time you agree to make a new console, you're basically taking, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, and saying, all right, go off and R&D me a console. Go make a new, what color is this one going to be? That's going to cost a lot of money, paying people to figure out what color the box should be. But also we've got to go figure out what parts we can put in this thing. What's the price point we can sell it at? Are we going to lose money on the console, or are we going to sell it at a profit? Are we going to, the very idea of making a new console is inherently expensive. And you're spending all that upfront before you've made any return on it, because it's going to take you a couple of years or more to fully realize that design. Well, more than a couple of years, but to realize that design, get it on shelves. And also you're looking at a market that is rapidly changing and trying to go like, okay, in 4 years, are people going to want to spend $600 on a console? I feel like we're entering that point again right now, right? And that's kind of where the question is coming from. Is right now when you've got Sony out there saying like, oh yeah, the PlayStation 5 is kind of entering the back half of its lifespan, and you start to inherently have those conversations and go like, all right, well, what's next then? And what will people want then? And so you're trying to hit this moving target with a bunch of slow-moving technology, or you have to pick your technology years before, so you're like, okay, well, what can we pick now that we know we can sell for $500 or less? Probably $500. And how can we, what can we afford to put inside the next box that will wow people, that will make them want to buy one, that will move games forward in a visible way so we can have an easier time selling it, and blah, blah, blah. Like all of the things that factor into that. You're making those decisions years prior, And that's got to be fucking terrifying. Even if it's not your money. Even if you're sitting inside of Sony, playing with Sony's money, spending Sony's money, that's still got to be horrifying. So many jobs are on the line, not just yours, but an entire division if you fucked all that up. And then you have to make sure that you're doing what developers want to work. Is this going to be easier for developers? We have to have our third-party people go out there and advocate for our platform and have very tight, closed conversations with our trusted third-party partners to say like, okay, what do you hate about our machine right now? What's the problem with it? And if they come back and go like, well, it doesn't have enough RAM. Like, okay, well, we're going to note that and we're going to move forward, And so sometimes you have that conversation early enough that you can change and pivot and do this, or you're showing them proposed specs and letting them kick the tires on it and go like, what would this be enough, or do you think we need to do more? Like all of that shit. There was the famous story about hey, we doubled the RAM in our platform because we showed it to Epic and they said this is not enough, and so we doubled our RAM very late in the game, and it was very expensive for us to double the RAM in our console after we had already made all of these different decisions. And so, so like, it's terrifying. It's all terrifying. And so the idea of, so of course these conversations probably happen every time. And so it's not weird that in 2007, they were thinking, what is there going to be a next console? Because they have to ask that every time. Because they have to go like, well, if it's not a next console, then what is it? Because we need to figure out whatever it is, and we need to make it and sell it because we have a brand to protect and we have money to be like, we have to keep this division going. So what are we making? Is it a console? Is it a phone? Is it what the fuck are we doing? The follow-up question I think is really good too, because he asks this, they just ask Peter Moore, do you think this is the last console generation? He says, well, it's a great question already. PS5 saying, yeah, maybe we could sunset this thing, but no mention of a PS6. Now, look, Sony is very much a hardware company, so I would say that that's your barometer company. Microsoft, not so much. Microsoft, I'm sure, would love it if everything moved into the cloud. The only thing that Microsoft doesn't get to play in as well as anybody else is the smartphone business, right? Because that's where Apple, Google, and the handset manufacturers will benefit from enormously, and they already are. They're making tens of billions of dollars without really trying in gaming with their 30% royalties. But I think it's a real serious question that's being asked, I'm sure, in Tokyo, in Redmond, Washington, in Kyoto. That's what everybody's working on right now, because when you start off that next generation, you've got to be ready to absorb billions of dollars in losses. And is the industry, given all the layoffs and everything we're going through right now, is the industry ready for that? Look at Sony laying off 900 people, a lot there in the UK. My 2 eldest daughters work at EA. They're all right, but they're always looking over their shoulder. You just never know. And he kind of gets into some of the COVID stuff and hiring too aggressively, and says, I always call it the Peloton theory of, oh, we're forever going to be at home and we're forever going to be playing games and jumping on a bike. Well, no, we're not. And if you thought that, as did Peloton, and you geared up for that future, then that's why they're in such a financial mess right now. So, and they try to pin him down to say, like, hey, are you saying that consoles are coming to an end? And he kind of says, no. What he's saying is that the questions are being asked, right? Because that's all the stuff that all of the hardware manufacturers have to take into account right now. And Peter Moore has been there. I mean, he's been there at a different time. He's been there under very different circumstances. Like the Microsoft he was there for was a very different one than exists today. His time at Sega is, I mean, he did a lot of great work there for sure, but it's kind of ancient history at this point, and the reasons behind the Dreamcast's failure are not even especially relevant in this day and age when we're thinking about consoles moving forward and whatever else. So I guess like that's yeah, I think he's 100% right that they are going to ask those questions and try to figure out, like, what's the path forward? Is it a new console? Is it a hybrid strategy? Is it because they're all trying to reach the same goal. Xbox and Phil Spencer has been kind of the most upfront about talking about what I think their goals are. And I think that Sony does it occasionally as well. But it's become kind of, the not a broken record per se, but it's been the stated goal of Microsoft for a very long time is to reach more players. Is to find more players, not necessarily, reach more players. Like you can expand your business kind of one of two ways, right? You can find ways to get more money out of your existing consumers, or you can find new consumers. And ultimately, they all try to do both in different ways, right? So when we think about a PlayStation 5 Pro, that is something that becomes appealing to the most dedicated PlayStation 5 owner right now because they want to continue to have the newest, latest. And so they get a reason for players to double dip. They find a way for players to buy another PlayStation 5. But also it provides them with another new box they get to put in front of people and hopefully drag in new players who have held off on upgrading to any of the modern consoles and go like, oh, well, now I get an even better one if I buy one now. And I happen to be able to afford the 600, whatever it is. That's a lot of ifs, right? But that's part of it. But the other part of it is been the streaming strategy from Microsoft. It's been the like, hey, is this something that can help us reach players that are not currently engaging with any of our content? Can we find a new audience out there on phones? And the answer seems like so far, if we look at some of the emails that came out in court cases and some of the other stuff, so far it seems like the answer is probably not right now. The streaming audience, the streaming only audience doesn't seem like it is massive. Maybe it will be someday as that tech improves, or if the consoles become too expensive for people to buy and they go like, well, I want to continue playing games, so I guess I'm going to sign up for xCloud, or I guess I'm going to sign up for GeForce Now, or I guess I'm going to sign up for some kind of streaming focused service. Stadia shit the bed. It didn't have to. But a lot of the decisions made around Google's Stadia stuff were bad. But Stadia was a thing that I think worked well enough for a lot of players, depending on the types of games. And xCloud, I put it in the same bucket, like the PlayStation streaming stuff, like streaming in general, and it's not necessarily about Stadia. Like, will the tech improve? Yes, probably. Will it improve enough to overcome the speed of light and the inherent problems? No. But if companies start to feel that streaming really is the future, which I mean, I'm not, this is not me saying that it is, but if the data pointed to streaming as the way forward for all platforms, and this is what a direction that they're like, this is it, this is where we're going, we're not going to sell a console, we're going to sell a streaming box, games would change. The types of games being made would change. I think for the worse, but I also think that there are probably enough more casual players out there that simply don't care. You think about there's a casual audience out there for games that just, you think about the people that would plug in their Xbox 360 without knowing that there was a switch on the cable from like SD to HD, or they would plug it in with the wrong cables, and they would plug their Xbox 360 into their HD TV with the SD cables and not even notice. Now apply that to something as like even further esoteric as input latency. Like how many of those players know that like, oh, this feels bad, or like you get it bad enough, like everyone will pick it up and go like, this doesn't feel right. But if you are making games specifically for a streaming audience, if you're making games specifically for a streaming environment, you build them to be more latency tolerant. And that impacts things like I always go back to fighting games. Fighting games to me are kind of like the one of the biggest tests. When I pick up a controller for the first time, I think about it in terms of like, would I play a fighting game on this? And when I think about netcode, when I think about streaming, I think about games that are not very latency tolerant. Fighting games, frame data, frame specific attacks, just frames, all of the shit that people love about fighting games at a middle to high level would be significantly more difficult to do in their existing form inside of a streaming service. Driving games, I think, are another good test of this, because driving games move so fast, and like there's the turns you're making. Lining up headshots in a shooter can sometimes be an indicator there, but like a lot of games just fudge it. And so that's the thing, right? Okay, if we can just fudge it, we'll just fudge it even further for a streaming game. And so players will they'll be off by a few milliseconds here, and they'll be off by their aim will be a little bit wrong because they pulled the trigger here when they should have pulled it here. And so technically when we line it all up, they missed, but fuck it. They hit. It's fine. You got him in the head. You fucking rule, bro. You fuck that dude up. That's all they got to do. Is just fake it. So you'll have more and more games that'll get that kind of weird, wishy-washy feeling to avoid latency, right? That'll have to be the thing that game developers do if they are building games very specifically for a streaming world. But we don't live in a streaming world yet, and so they don't. And so part of that is a chicken and egg thing, and hey, whatever else. But I do think all that stuff is doable, and I do think that there is a mainstream audience that will never care. It's the mainstream audience that, like, when you complain about things like, why doesn't this game run at a constant 60 frames a second? They're the people who are going like, what? They don't know. They don't care. They don't care. They simply don't. If more players cared about latency, if more players cared about frame rate, games would run better. Games would have even lower latency than they do. Games are actually pretty good about latency these days. But like, if the mainstream player cared about 60 frames a second, then more games would run that way because sales would be impacted. There'd be a whole thing, but they don't. And so instead they're like, look at this sick ray tracing, man. It runs at 30, but look at, when you pause it, it sure looks good. So I don't know, man. It's ultimately, I think that like there will be some reckoning, or there will be some shift in this style of gaming that will I think it will. I think there's a real possibility that it will take away some aspect of the things that like that I have classically loved about gaming, and that is that pick up and play, like that very crisp controls, like that feel, like, you know, you don't want a thing to be mushy. You want to fucking hit the button and the punch comes out. You want to see that shit connect, and you know, you. And if they fake it good enough, maybe no one will care. But yeah, I don't know. Games already fudge it today. You know, it's why the conversation about game pads versus controller versus a mouse and keyboard has become kind of weird, right? Isn't like everyone playing Apex using a controller now because it's significantly better than mouse and keyboard because of what they do to tune the feel of the controller and line things up for you and whatever else. I thought it was Apex, but so, you know, maybe it's just an enhanced version of that, and if they pull it off right, no one will ever notice. But I don't know, man. You know, it's a series of weird situations, right? And you know, but I do think that we eventually get to a point where someone tries it. Someone tries to tip it, and if it's not streaming, it's something else. Like I don't know. There's always, there are probably approaches to this that we're not thinking of that are more hybridized, right? Where it's like, okay, what if you, and maybe this doesn't matter, right? But you know, as we think about offloading more and more logic to the cloud, right? Of just like, okay, this AI is running in the cloud, and so we have the ability to have more realistic, or you know, whatever, or reactions, or whatever the fuck it is. Maybe you don't need as much power in the box that's in your house, because you can get away with like, okay, well, it has to have an internet connection because this game requires it, which is a nightmare for preservation and all this other shit. But again, who the fuck cares? Not them. I do. You might. But game preservation and you know, that's not, when people are thinking about the future of games and the games they're going to make over the next 10 years, you know, no. And it's probably not this, but if dumb terminals are the answer, and it's just like, okay, we're just going to render everything off site and ship it to you. Hopefully you got the latencies. Hopefully you got good internet. I'm told it's ubiquitous now, so you probably do. And that's what they'll do. But I do feel like, you know, it's not necessarily going to be this next generation. I think we get a PlayStation 6. And I think after that, it gets like even hazier. The interview, the Peter Moore interview is wide ranging, kind of touches on some of his time at Sega and some of that other stuff. I mean, they ask about the like Microsoft going multi-platform and all this other stuff. And you know, and this other interview that I'm about to get into, the Shawn Layden interview with VentureBeat, touches on a lot of that same territory. From a slightly different perspective, though. Because, you know, they're asking Peter Moore, like, well, you know, hey, do you think that Microsoft will ever release Halo on PlayStation? And he basically just says, like, those conversations always happen because they're about money. They're not about hearts and minds. They're about, like, what's the thing that makes most business sense? Do we sacrifice too much of our existing exclusive business by putting our games on other platforms, or would we actually make more money by doing that? Those are the only, you know, like when they get out there and say we're not bringing all of our games to other platforms, you know, like that's why. If it made them more money to do the other thing, they would do that. But so much of their subscription revenue is wrapped up in the idea of an Xbox, the idea of an Xbox platform, the idea of this and that, you know, like the idea of games that are only on Xbox is certainly a part of that, to maintain that money coming in from subscribers. So they're all just building shareholder value in their own unique ways. Don't get it twisted. It's part of why the whole console fanboy thing has been even dumber lately. Because like you're that's not, they you know, people, that's not to say that like the people on the ground don't care about other human beings and whatever else. Like, you know, yeah, of course they can, if they can do things that work out for everyone, then they'll do that. If it's like, oh, we want to make our fans happy. Like, okay, why do you want to make our fans happy? Like, because they've been with us for a long time. It's like, okay, yeah, but why really? Like, oh, because we get more money out of them because we grow our business by either making more money off our existing fan base or finding ways to grow our fan base. Right? So that's what they're doing. It doesn't make them evil per se. It doesn't mean that the people that give the interviews and that they're necessarily evil. They're part of a machine. They're all part of this machine. You and I, we're all part of this machine. It's called capitalism, friends. All right, well, whatever. The Shawn Layden interview. I was about to say, you know, hey, no one's evil in this situation, but a lot of this Shawn Layden interview is about the blockchain. So he, you know, in his time away from Sony, he has started to advise companies like Tencent and some other companies that are involved in blockchain gaming. So some portion of this interview is kind of about that, and that's why it's interesting because he's coming at it from a different perspective. I don't think it's a good one. I don't think it's a sensible one. He even at some point in this interview cites that old idea of like, you know, what if you could make armor and use it in multiple games? It's a whole different revenue stream, and you know, kind of ties some of that back into how much everyone hated used games and how, you know, because and he says, oh, you know, they lost it in America and Japan. You don't do used games because the laws are different. But in the US, it was a lost cause because there was already used books and albums and all this other stuff. And his thing was like, hey, digital assets don't deteriorate. And that's why it's weird that you can sell them used, is because they're as good as they are on day one. I would say that used CDs are, I mean, that's a digital asset. The CDs don't sound worse unless you buy a scratched up CD, in which case you throw it away instead of selling it. But well, anyway, not to pick that specific part of the argument apart, but like, he is kind of coming at it from a very similar place as Peter Moore, I think. Just again, from a slightly different perspective, but it is that same idea of like, these games are getting more and more expensive to make. You know, when you're spending over $200 million on an individual game, that's why all of a sudden a lot of the, you know, you're seeing a lot of sequels and things that seem very risk averse at that level, because once you're spending that amount of money, you have to make safer bets. There's a question kind of about like inflation and some of the price points and all this other stuff, but there's a bit here from Layden. He says Crash Bandicoot back in 1998 cost $49.99, but it probably cost less than $7 million to make. It sells 10 to 15 million units. Well, hey, in today's world, God of War costs more than $100 million to make, and yet you can only charge $59.99. What happens to your break-even point? That's why back in the late 90s, there were a lot more Ferraris in the parking lot at game developers. The profit sharing explodes. Price elasticity has been a huge problem in gaming. And GamesBeat asks him about solutions. He says, granted, I'm an old man. We have our own nostalgia, but I look back at the PS2 era and there was so much variety. You had God of War and Assassin's Creed, but you also had Loco Roco and SingStar and Dance Dance Revolution. You had this entire spectrum of entertainment opportunities. At $7 to $12 million a throw, why not make a bet and see what happens? Katamari Damacy, for Christ's sake, you couldn't get that built today because you can't even explain what it is. But now when every bet is triple-digit millions, risk tolerance is super low. You end up with copycats and sequels and not much more. I think that's maybe a slightly narrow view, because, you know, I do think that there are, you know, are games being made at all sizes, big and small, but, you know, he's obviously coming from a position as the head of Sony, and he's thinking about the AAA space, and he's thinking about, you know, the kind of traditional publishing model and traditional publishers and so on and so forth, right? And so I think from that perspective, he's right. Like, the idea that Katamari made it out as big as it did seemed crazy then. And sure, yeah, you could make a Katamari at an indie level, and you could, you know, that game could still exist. I don't think that game necessarily doesn't exist, but it doesn't exist as a big budget console game, which it probably was not a huge budget console game then. But I mean, it shipped on a disc for a PlayStation 2, which at the time meant it met certain criteria and a certain amount of money was invested in it. And then it was such that it was eventually brought to the United States, which was crazy. It had a lot of marketing because it needed it, because you had to explain to people what it is. And I think that's something that I do think that there was that grassroots support for Katamari coming from the press. Like, when I saw that game in Japan, I wrote emphatically about it. I spoke emphatically about it because it was fucking amazing. And I think that, you know, like, whether that led to people importing the game, and then maybe they saw the import numbers, or maybe they saw the sales numbers and were able to back it out into how many of those sales came from the import community, and figure out, here's how we bring it out in the US, and because it's already made its money back in Japan, we can sell it at a discount here. And so it released as a budget game. And so, yeah, you know, you could maybe do something like that as an indie game nowadays. I think he's a little bit off there, but, you know, when you look at why Warner Brothers is doing what it's doing, and you look at Warner Brothers saying, like, we need to be making more out of our franchises. We need to have mobile tie-ins. We need to figure out live service. We need to figure out, you know, and how they're applying that to more and more of those games. You know, that's a factor of what he's talking about. When he says, when every bet is triple-digit millions, risk tolerance is super low, you end up with copycats and sequels and not much more. You also end up with companies who are trying to get every dollar they can out of players. And so that's why they try every trick in the book, right? They're like, here's our $100 version, and you can play it 3 days early. So that's a marketing hook for them. And they can figure out, like, okay, we can do this. And that leads to streamers playing it, quote unquote, 3 days early, which maybe leads to people going like, I want to buy that now, but I have to buy the expensive version. Oh no. And maybe some people are upsold on the expensive version that wouldn't have been otherwise. There are a lot of different levers they can pull and tools they can use to try to make games more attractive these days. And most of them are ridiculous. I just wonder if there's a way off this ledge, right? Can you unring this particular bell of like, hey, what if we stopped spending that kind of money on games? What if we figured out a way to not make games for $200 or $300 million, or, you know, $200 million plus $100 million in marketing, or, you know, whatever it was. And I think the answer is probably going to be dependent on the franchise and the type of game and whatever else. But like, now that companies have kind of charged through the door on this $70 price point, I think you've got, and, you know, I think you'll have some players that are, you know, a little more savvy, that pay a little more attention to things. Those are the people that say, like, I want games to be shorter and you know, and made more ethically or what have you. But again, I think you've got a larger audience of people that don't care, that don't know, that they're not paying attention. They shouldn't have to. No one should have to. I liken myself to, like, you know, like, I don't really give a shit about how movies are made. I'll watch a movie from time to time, not really much anymore, but I don't really care about the movie business, you know? And so, like, when they're like, oh, the movie business is unsustainable and all this other stuff, I'm like, that's nice. I like, whatever, man. If it went away tomorrow, that's fine. I don't care. But I do care about games. And so I follow that stuff a lot more closely. And I just care a lot more about games and how they're made. But because I'm that way about other types of media, I can't fault anyone for being that way about games, who are just like, people that are just not at all plugged into this because they shouldn't have to be. They should, if they see an ad on TV, I don't even know how people find out about fucking games anymore, man. How do those people get marketed to? How do those people hear about games coming out? Because those are people that are probably not looking at Twitch even. They're just like, I don't know, I buy 3 games a year and, I like baseball, so I get MLB The Show. And then, this other thing came out. That sounds fascinating. Maybe they just served ads on YouTube, whatever. Ads. They don't even know that there are ways around the ads, these people. So, yeah. So, anyway, I guess like that's, I can't fault anyone for not paying close enough attention to a type of media to really be plugged into like, it's unsustainable. Like they're just like, whatever, man. Spider-Man 2 is sick. That's a sick video game. They should make more video games like that because that one was really good. So now what if you're a game developer and you try to back off that ledge and you're like, okay, like for us to break even on this game, we still have to sell it for $60 or $70, but also it's not going to be as detailed as Spider-Man 2 was. It's not going to be as in-depth as we're backing down on this. It's going to be a little bit shorter. It's not going to have as much side content. It's going to have fewer cutscenes. Like things that might start to show qualitatively to that audience. And are they going to notice and go like, this game is a ripoff? Like, don't buy this game. It's fucking terrible. They want $70 for this thing, and it's no Spider-Man 2. Like, has the industry kind of fucked itself on that front? When it comes to just like figuring out how to make AAA, how to make big games, how to make big games more sustainably by making them slightly less big. Because at an indie level, like those games can, you can make shorter, more detailed indie game. Like that stuff's happening all the time. In different ways, in different shapes, in different scales. Like, of course that stuff's happening. But when you start to play around at that upper tier, like, does it start to impact those kind of larger mainstream sales or what have you? I think, there are ways to mitigate that, or ways to, there are a ton of different ways to approach that, I guess is what I mean to say. Hybrid business models, different ways to monetize, different ways to, let's not charge $70 for this. Like, look at Halo Infinite, for example. Remove the issues with Halo Infinite that it had at launch and some of the other stuff around that. I think the blueprint for Halo Infinite is not necessarily broken. They just didn't launch a thing that fired on all cylinders. But if the idea of like, hey, we're going to do this free-to-play multiplayer thing, and then we're going to sell this story mode for a lower price point. I don't think that's inherently bad. I think that there are probably ways to make that work. And like if you look at the biggest games in the world, they're all free to play, right? Well, Minecraft isn't, but like, your Fortnites and your Robloxes, they're free to play and they're making a whole lot of fucking money. Is that ethical? Probably not. Will there be a reckoning there? Maybe. Genshin Impact. Sure. If that's, I don't know that I would say that Genshin Impact is one of the biggest games in the world, but Apex is free to play. Like we have a lot of very big free to play games out there. And I would worry more about, and this is a concern that has come back around over and over again. What do we do about single player games? In a world where everyone wants to monetize long term, in a world where everyone wants their game to be a live service game, in a world where everyone feels they need to try to make more than $70 off of their games now, or have a higher average price per user, or whatever it is, whatever metric it is. But like, in a world where they want to get a lot more out of players than just the initial retail spend, like, how do you do that? And so I think in that context, the way that Halo did it, as a player, I prefer that model more than, hey, every story-driven game is now also a fucking 3-player co-op live service game. Please buy some skins. What if there were 3 Kratoses? What if Kratos had another Kratos with him, and then there was another Kratos, and this Kratos is a healer, and this Kratos is a tank, and this Kratos has a bow and arrow, and he's actually Kratos' son, and he's got a bow and arrow. And what if you could run missions in the world of God of War for the next 7 years? Now that's a story worth telling. But like, I don't know. Like, I'm not doom and gloom on it per se, because I think single player games have sucked it out and made it through before. But like, very specifically, like, think about Spider-Man 2. They will sell DLC for it if the leaked dev menu thing is to be believed. They've already got that in the works in some capacity. What do? If they want to make single player games and they want that to continue to be a thing, and that's been very much Sony's bread and butter, then I do think that they need to find ways to make those games for less money. But I don't know how. I mean, I'm not a budget guy, so I don't know what the fuck. I don't know what the fuck to do there anyway. But like, some of the leaks and some of the other stuff was around this notion of like, could we have fewer cutscenes? Could we do this? Could we do that? There's a lot of little things like that. They're, seemingly little things that, yeah, they probably should be looking at for that type of game. That doesn't fit every single type of game. But there are a ton of models out there. And, obviously Sony wants to engage in multiple versions of those models to try to find ways to extract as much money from you as possible in various ways. Helldivers, obviously, is a multiplayer focused game. It is vaguely live servicey with its war bands and premium currency and whatever else, and it probably makes sense for that game to be that if they're gonna intend to support it for a good long time, which with the rate of success it's having, I'm sure they will support it for years to come. But that's not you can't just apply that to every single game. Like, I don't know, like there's stuff in Suicide Squad, I guess, like that, but forget Suicide Squad. I go back to Avengers. I go back to Marvel's Avengers, the live service game from your friends at Square Enix. And I would also probably lump Diablo 4 into this a little bit, but it's a slightly different situation. But those are 2 games where I very much enjoyed the story content. I very much enjoyed the like, hey, play this thing, and there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then we're going to roll credits. Like, both those games have that. Like, there's an end to the Avengers storyline, and I found it to be very satisfying. I found like the gameplay in that game to be okay to get you from that point to that point. And like, that's it. Everything that Avengers asked you to do after those credits rolled was bad, or like significantly less interesting at best. You're just like, okay, no, like I care about this story. I think that like they've done it. They've told a great little comic book story here. They've fleshed out these characters in a way that I, as someone who doesn't read comics, like I didn't know this stuff and found it super engaging. I had a pretty good time with this thing. And then it all falls apart. Diablo 4, I would say the exact same thing. Like, I found that game to be very engaging right up until the credits rolled, and then it dumps you back into the world, and I'm like, oh, I fucking don't want to touch this. And then their seasonal model of like trying to get you back in and selling you all these cosmetics and all this other stuff, and like make a new character for this season, and that season's done, and so now you're on the Eternal Realm, and this, like, all the stuff they've done. I think that stuff's super bad. It's just not engaging. Like the story content that I've seen, and I dropped off of Diablo 4, and I know that every one of their seasons they try to have some story style content in there to connect these levels around and whatever else. I have found that to be completely uninteresting, which is fine because I feel like I got my money out of Diablo 4. I played it to completion, and I'm done. I hope that they add more funds, like just more universally repeatable stuff that's outside of their seasonal model, because the stuff I ended up really liking about Diablo 3 were a lot of you would open up the new dungeons and go in and they would just mash all the tile sets together, and it was repeatable content, but it was like fun enough. You're leveling up, you're still building your character, you're still doing stuff that felt like meaningful for your character. And so I don't know. I liked that aspect of Diablo 3 more, and presumably they will eventually get to that stuff. But the story stuff that I did see in Diablo 4 seemed like exceptionally bad compared to the main story of the game, which I liked. Some people were kind of whatever about it, but like I thought that main story was fine. But like, do they pull enough? I mean, Avengers, the answer is clearly no, right? For Diablo is kind of a different beast. Do they pull enough people into that seasonal model to where they're getting the monetization at the rate that they feel comfortable with to support it for years to come? Do they feel like it will eventually be a live service success, if not already? I can't imagine that they view it as a live service success, but that's my own take coloring that opinion, I'm sure. Maybe they're happy with the numbers. I don't know. But like for Avengers, clearly the answer was no. That they did not craft an engaging enough, repeatable experience to keep people coming back and keep people spending money. So yeah, I don't know. And when you start looking at, like, again, Spider-Man, hundreds of millions of dollars, a game with a very set start and finish, and yeah, maybe you new game plus it, maybe you play the DLC, but it's not a game that's meant to be played for 5 years straight. Nothing should be, but that's the world we live in. What do you do there? And people, Meatlove69 says 2,000 people play Diablo 4 on Steam. I think anyone who cared about Diablo 4 already bought it on Battle.net, and they're not going to buy it again. So it's hard to look at the Steam numbers, which don't include console numbers, but also don't include Battle.net, which is where people have been buying Diablo games for years now. So I don't, those are not great Steam numbers, and they may be indicative of something, but also the game will hit Game Pass at some point, and whatever, right? I guess that's all a very long-winded way of saying, like, man, I don't fucking know. I don't think anyone else does either, which is heartening in some ways. Because I think if anyone truly felt like they had it figured out and they're like, this is where it's all going and we're going to go there, I think that right now those answers are bad. Right now those directions, those signposts don't look good. And it's why you've got a guy like Shawn Layden advising blockchain companies. And having a very, a very different take on some of this stuff because of that, and because of where he thinks the blockchain can take gaming and whatever else. This interview is not necessarily fully about that, but it's interesting. But the Peter Moore interview at IGN, you should give it a look, because Peter Moore is just I think he's one of those longtime luminary figures that has seen so much and been through so much shit. I think he's always just got an interesting perspective on a lot of stuff, especially now that he kind of got out and did his sports thing and everything. Like he was always a fascinating guy. I have not, other than bumping into him in an elevator in Tokyo, I don't know that I have spoken with Peter Moore much personally. But I think he's always been just a fascinating figure, and I think it's an interesting perspective to have right now, especially as, like, I think a lot of this stuff is up in the air about, like, well, what does a new console mean? What is the technology? Where does the technology take us? What makes the most sense for the next 9 years, or whatever it is? Like what are they going to do next? Is it more of this? It could be more of this, and I think that would be fine. But I wish, I don't know, man. The other thing I guess I would say is like, it's a weird thing to pine for, but like when I think about the Xbox 360 era and really more the PlayStation 2, but like when I think about those two generations of consoles, you know, that's a business that just doesn't exist anymore. That's a video game industry that doesn't exist anymore. You know, everything is so different now. That I kind of pine for that, which again, I think is a weird thing for people to pine for. I feel like I'm not alone in that. Because when you go back and look at a lot of the games that were coming out then, like remember that the Xbox 360 was also the peak brown era for games of just like everything brown, all of these games. Here's a bunch of dudes in a leaning up against a brown wall, shooting a brown gun over the brown wall and a bunch of brown sandbags. So to like, I'm not necessarily pining for that because I don't think that, you know, it's some mix of like, it's the variety of games available during the PlayStation 2 era. I think that's really it. And I feel like that's something that like, for all the stuff that I think a lot of indie games are doing, and you know, for as much as I think that it's awesome that video games have kind of grown into this very wide and sweeping thing that so many different people engage with in so many different ways. You know, the mention of Katamari there is like, you know, call it the Blue Sky era of Sega, call it Sega and Blue Sky Gaming and all the UK resistance shit from back then. They were right, turns out. But like, I don't know, like that's an industry that was in some ways a little less worldwide, so you could still import a game and be surprised by something. And nowadays the Japanese market often targets the US market, targets a worldwide market, which I think is smarter for them. And Japanese styles of gaming have become popular in a way that they weren't then. So it's like it's a hard thing because like in some ways a lot of that stuff is better now. Like, you know, we get the Yakuza games and they're bigger and crazier than they ever were, and they're fucking incredible. And I wish I had more time to spend with them. But you know, there's just something about the like, hey, Namco is going to ship 30 games this year across 5 platforms, and some of them are handheld and some of this are like, hey, man, fucking, I don't know, we're just shipping them out. We're just cranking them out, man. They're coming out all the time. There were so many more games on disc. There's a wider number of games then, but like, you know, again, we're talking about Katamari and how games reach a certain level and they're out on disc and they're out, you know, they're real, quote unquote. It's not what I mean. I don't mean real, but like yeah. It's hard to put into words because it's a vibe, it's a feeling that it does not exist anymore. And the reasons why it doesn't are sensible. All of this is me building up to tell you I spent some time playing Dr. Mudo on the PlayStation 2 this week, as well as a game that Namco shipped called Urban Rain. These are not good games. Dr. Mudo is especially like, I had forgotten. Dr. Mudo is a platformer that Midway put out on the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and GameCube. And it is a highly questionable platformer. You're a doctor. You can turn into a mouse, and so you can get small, and so their levels are anyway. And then Urban Rain is like a beat 'em up that's like real crazy. It's real silly. You're leveling up a character as you go, so it's got these weird kind of RPG hooks, and like there's a little bit of juggling in it, but it's also like, hey, we're trying to take a beat 'em up and make it 3D, and you know, different developers tried that a lot over that period of time with varying degrees of success and all that other stuff. It was just a different, weirder industry. It was a lot smaller. It was a much smaller industry then. as for as much as there were like more big publishers publishing more games per year, but like it was a much smaller and stranger industry then. And there are aspects of that I certainly miss. The specific type of variety that existed back then was just a different thing than the variety we have now, I guess. And I don't know that I can say that one is better or worse or whatever. You know, it's nostalgia. There's a lot of different, and a lot of my shit is wrapped up in like covering the industry then, and you know, going to all of these events and talking to people about the games they're making, and like I'm gonna do 12 interviews of people. You know, it's like, what are you working on? Dragon Ball Z for the fucking GBA? All right, great. Sit down. Let's talk about that. I don't even know what's up with Goku this time. There you go. It's the one thing I know about Dragon Ball. Let's talk about it. You know. Automodelista. A real missed opportunity, Automodelista. Capcom had this driving game with like toon shading, cell shading. And it has so much fucking style, but the game itself leans too heavily into the simulation aspect of things and like doesn't play well. The handling is fucking terrible in Automodelista. It's garbage. And if they had made that game a little bit more like something like a Ridge Racer or tried to make something that was a little more arcadey, man, that could have been an incredible video game. Automodelista is the most disappointing game of all time. You heard it here first. Go look at a video. Don't play it because it'll just bum you out. But go look up videos of Automodelista. Like maybe the Xbox version or something. That's probably technically the best looking version. I think it came out. I think it wasn't just PS2 and GameCube. I think it also came out on Xbox. But like that was a game where you saw trailers for it and you were like, holy shit. Look at this driving game. Look at this cell shaded driving game. It was mind blowing. And I remember building myself up like, oh man, I can't wait to fucking get my hands on this fucking thing. Look at this. Holy shit. It's so incredible. Look at it. And then getting to like TGS, you know, getting out to Tokyo Game Show, or, you know, maybe Capcom showed it in the US first. I don't remember exactly where. It might have been E3. It could have been anywhere. Well, I remember getting my hands on Automodelista. And I think they put out a demo also. Anyway. I remember getting my hands on Automodelista and being like, all right, let's go. And driving, going like, fuck. Ah, shit. Oh, damn it. Oh, man. Damn. Like it was so thoroughly not a video game that you wanted to play because of just how frustrating the handling of the cars was back then. And then, yeah, they did make tweaks between the Japanese version and the US version, and neither of them get the job done. Ugh. I think, you know, with the look, it would have been better off with a more arcade style. Not to say it should have been Ridge Racer, but, you know, a more arcade style driving game. But they tried to do basically like they tried to make a simulation style racing game and did a bad job of it. So, you know, ultimately that's frustrating. But such is life. All right. Let's get into some emails here. podcast@guard.bike is the email address for you to send in some emails. And I will take a look at them and I'll choose a few. An anonymous emailer writes in and says, the company I work for has just sold all its assets to a much larger company, and now I'm faced with potentially losing my job or ending up in a much worse one. As someone who has been through the acquisition ringer a few times, how did you deal with the uncertainty, the fear, and not knowing where your next paycheck is coming from? Obviously, I know you're not a lawyer or anything, just looking for ways to keep my head as this happens to and around me. I feel like most of the time, you know, hey, you know, I'll say the most recent acquisition I went through came at a time where the feeling was largely like, well, it fucking can't get any worse. in a way that was like, and if you know, job security is a funny thing, right? But it's a situation where you're like, maybe someone new will come in and give a shit about what we're doing because they sure as fuck don't now. And then you go through the process, they kick the tires on everything they just bought, and then you look at it and they go, oh no, they're super not going to care about this thing either. Or they'll only care about it if you destroy it in very fucked up ways to suit whatever their needs are. And then you're like, well, that's okay, whatever. But I think, you know, I've gotten, at that point, I was ready to walk away from that job anyway. You know, like things had gotten to a point where you're just like, all right, man, let's fucking roll the dice on this. And let's see what it looks like on the other side. Let's spend some time as a part of this company and see what it looks like and see if it makes any sense. And then you get to a point where you're just like, nope. You know, gave it a shot. Gave it a fair, honest try. But no. No, it turns out. And now here we are. Yeah. But if you're in a situation where like you know, and no one can afford to lose a job, right? I mean, that's always the thing. But like I was at a point there where it was like, okay, I'm ready to start looking anyway. And it was a different market then than it is now. It was not a great market then, but there were opportunities out there then in that line of work that no longer exist. So there's that. But I guess like I go through that stuff and you try to keep an open mind about it a little bit. But the real answer is you never know. You never know where your next paycheck is coming from. Job security is a myth. It's not like think about it this way. If your company didn't sell, it's not like things were going to remain the same there. Like, you know, things may have fallen apart there too. Like the company is being acquired for a reason. And it's probably because someone who is not you stands to make a bunch of money out of it. But also maybe the company's not going well. Maybe the company is in a situation where it's like, okay, well, you know, we're going to sell it. Otherwise we're going to have to shut it down, or we'll just have to sell it for even less money next year because we'll have laid a bunch of people off and all that other stuff. And so I would focus on your skills because that is, you know, job security is a myth, but your skills are not. And so if you've got something that will make you more employable and, you know, by someone else or whatever else, like that's something you can always feel better about. You can, you know, about the position that you're in, about the, you know, if you feel like you've got at least something that is like, okay, here's what my next move probably is. I don't know where, I don't know with who, I don't know with what, but like something along the lines of this. I'm good at, you know, like if you're good at fixing cars, like let's say you're in the car fixing business. I don't know, you didn't say what you do for a living, so. Like those are skills that will continue to be necessary in some other way, shape, or form. So keep current with it. Make sure that you're current with it so that you can set yourself up for success somewhere else if that's what needs to happen. Also, see if there are opportunities at the new company. There are certainly cases where like you could work your way up you know, like sometimes an acquisition can kind of clear up a log jam at the management level. And so if you're a person who is looking to ascend up some kind of ladder and make more money at this company or this specific line of work and whatever else, there are at times opportunities like that present themselves if you're willing to shift into whatever else. Now, me with what I was doing, you know, it was funny. Like the company that acquired us was like, and if you ever want to work in it, if you ever want to do something different, we have all these different divisions. As part of your employee review, we have this process where you can say, I'd like to work on this next year. And we'll take a look at it and think about it. And I'm like, that's fascinating, but like, I'm not an accountant. I don't, you know, like I'm not going to go to some other division of the company where I'm like, okay, like I'm the guy who talks about video games. I'm at this weird stage in the talking about video games game. I am one of the people who's been doing it the longest, it would be weird for me to go work on a website about credit card rewards or whatever the fuck. So like that never felt like a real thing. And, but like most of the company was not in that type of position, for sure. So that never felt real to me, but I would never want to do any of that other stuff. But if you're the person who, like you're looking to take on new skills, you're looking to take on different, there's sometimes acquisitions open up opportunities. Sometimes, depending on what you do and what you're amenable to doing and what you can do, right? I mean, acquisitions might be bad for the existing company and the existing team, but like teams don't last forever. None of them do. Stig just started Giant Skull out there. Stig Asmussen is formerly of Respawn, who worked on the last Star Wars Jedi game. They just announced their new studio this morning. They're building a new team. Some people from Respawn, some people from Epic, they're based in LA and they have some remote positions and whatever else. But like, there will be layoffs. There will be transitions. There will be, everyone needs to kind of remember, and I was never wired this way, but like there are some people out there that are changing jobs all the time. Every few years they're working somewhere else. And they always say that like the best way to maximize your earning potential is to change jobs every 3 years or whatever. And I was like, that's crazy specifically for what I do. But if I wanted to do things a different way, if I was more open to not being in like editorial or directly in content or whatever else, like there's a whole management layer I could have got lost in and been like, I don't know, man, do your SEO better or whatever the fuck, whatever the fuck those jobs are. But like, I don't know, management isn't all bad depending on what you do and where you do it. Like, that's not something that I was necessarily looking to do more of and all of that. So it was never, I remember they didn't even offer it to me originally, but I didn't want it, but it was like this funny thing where like the general manager was coming to tell me, cause like the guy who was my boss was leaving the company and they were bringing someone over from the UK to fill the role. And that was how it was told to me. He's like, oh, we're bringing this guy over and he's gonna be the new guy. We're swapping out one British man for another. You understand? I'm like, great. And then at some point he's telling me this, he stops, he goes, you didn't want that position, right? And I was like, no, absolutely not. And he's like, okay, cool. I figured. Because I didn't even talk to you about, like he realized that like I could have been someone who moved up into that role theoretically. Like I didn't want to do that. Not there anyway. And so, yeah, I don't know. There were opportunities that did come my way over the years to kind of be less in content and more in management. And I don't think that's my forte. And it's not largely because it's just never something I've sought to cultivate. Because I like doing this. I don't know. I like being in the chair. Maybe that's egotistical, but I like doing this shit. So I don't know, man. The thing I would say is keep an open mind, as open as you're willing to. Like but all, keep in mind your red lines, the things that you definitely will not do. And if you find yourself working for a company that is constantly trying to get you to do things that you don't want to do, and do sponsorship deals for products that you are not willing to represent, head for the door. If you can afford to, if you can find a way, find something else. Maybe that advice is weirdly specific to my situation, I guess. But I think that's the thing is be open to the things, be as open as you can be to change. You're going to be talking to a lot of new people who know nothing about what you do and why you do it and how you do it, because that's why they bought you. Hopefully they listen to you. If they come in and tell you, hey, this job you've been doing for a lot of decades, you should
You should do it this totally different way. And I'm like, cool, man. We did that. We tried it that different way this many years ago, and here's why it doesn't work. And they come back and go like, yeah, but we're going to do this anyway. Maybe you don't want to fucking work there. Maybe you don't want to work for those people, right? But keep an open mind, as open a mind as you can, and look for opportunities. If that's your career goal. I mean, everyone's going to want to do different stuff, right? It depends on what you're looking to do and what you're willing to do, and so on and so forth. Acquisitions don't necessarily have to be scary. There are always certain types of people who thrive post-acquisition. Like they find themselves elevated into a new position and they're able to oversee even more stuff. And so like not knowing what your role is, anonymous emailer, or what even industry it is or anything like that, I would say think about those types of opportunities and see if those sound engaging. If not, there are probably other companies out there that are doing something similar to what you do. Start poking around. See what's up, I guess. That's my advice. A lot of that's very weird advice, but I've had a very weird employment history, I suppose. You work a place for 11 years and then get out of there, or get pushed out of there, start a new thing, sell it back to the company that pushed you out of there, and then they do a bunch of nothing with it, sell a couple of times, and then push it. Anyway. Don't do it that way, I guess. I don't know. Let's see if we can get one more email here. Josh from Durham writes in with a WWE 2K24 related question, which, yeah, I guess I played some of that. There's a video on YouTube if you want to see that. I don't know that I have much to say about it. There's also that I haven't said already. You can find Glenn and I talking about WWE 2K24 as well as a lot of other things in a wide sweeping conversation on the Patreon. Let's see here. He says, I ignored your warning and read up on the lawsuit against Vince McMahon after hearing you talk about WWE 2K24 last week and wanted to get your take on something that I haven't been able to stop thinking about. I've heard a lot of people say the devs did what they could to remove Vince McMahon and maybe to a lesser extent to remove Brock Lesnar. In one bizarre case, Vince's face is blurred, but his whole character model is visible in another part of the game. While I understand it's extremely difficult to change anything once a game gets to a certain point in development, shouldn't doing the right thing override doing the most profitable thing in some cases? I don't understand. I also understand bills need to be paid and devs need to eat, so maybe I'm way off base, but it seems odd to decide not to put in the work to address the situation and fully remove Vince McMahon, at least. Thoughts? Yes. In an ideal scenario, they would have done the right thing and been uniform in that removal. But I think some of this stuff is still so recent that they don't have a blanket policy on what they need to do. And also it happened very late in development. And so I imagine that with everyone kind of reeling from like, oh shit, this happened, and we need to think about this, and we need to cover this, and we need to make sure that this is above board, and we've cut all this out. Like, I think that they just weren't in a position to make a call on that. 2K probably wasn't, and I'm sure that like this was something that WWE would have weighed in on, certainly. I think it's, it's funny in a way that they blurred his face out in some parts, but also like that's a guy who, for the particular mode that they're doing this year, where they're like, it's the history of WrestleMania. Like, it's in some ways the worst possible year for all that stuff, because suddenly it's like, oh geez. That's a guy who was a factor in some matches in WrestleMania history. So they probably have gameplay and modes and things that are built around him saying stuff. You know, there's like little bits and pieces of him throughout that thing. And so I'm sure that they probably cut what they could. And didn't miss their ship date. Which, yeah, I think that they could have cut more. But I don't know what it would have taken to do that. And I don't know, you know, like, I think that, like, I guess I would say that so much of that stuff was still in flux or whatever at a point that I think it's hard to get too mad at it. They did what they could in the time that they had. And what the right thing to do there, I think you will have different people who have different answers about that. You will probably have some people who are just like, well, you know, it's a lawsuit, he's not guilty, you know, which is like, okay, yeah. That's a way to go, I guess. Not the right way, but you could take that approach, I suppose. But I think there's probably just a lot of internal processes within WWE that they probably have not addressed or started to address or figured out. They just made the quick calls of like, okay, yank that dude out of the video package intro thing, and cut him wherever you can, and he's off the board of directors. And, you know, like they made another statement about him in their last earnings call, and so on and so forth. So I think they're, you know, it's a situation where you would like them to have a better, more codified kind of thing, but they don't. And so within all those confines and with those specific things, I guess I get why things would have gone the way that they went. And I would expect next year's game to look a lot different along those lines, I guess. But like also, you know, just yesterday, I think 2 more people got implicated in this, and one of them is the current CEO of the company. Implicated in a very different way than that other lawsuit, which again, I don't think you should necessarily go read. It's grotesque. The description of the sexual assault and so on and so forth. Like but yeah, this is stuff where the names kind of came out around who they were talking about. And we'll see what the net result of that is and what ends up happening there. But like, you know, WWE is very good at recreating their own history when they have to, and rebuilding their video packages around certain people. But that's a guy who is in so much of that footage for so many years and decades, and his voice on commentary and all of that other stuff, that I don't know. It would be a very heavy lift for them to actually completely excise him from the game completely. That is the right thing to do. And they didn't do it. So I guess I agree with you in concept that, like, yeah, you know, the right thing to do would have been delay the game to fix this. And I wonder if they ever patch it. I wonder if they end up patching the game at some point to remove more. If that's something that they feel the need to do. You know, you're editing videos at that point, which is, you know, it's doable for sure. You're probably recording a lot of new voiceover, which they did already do in some cases for different people, where they had, like, you know, kind of new commentators or new ring announcers, I guess specifically, where they had the modern ring announcer doing like WrestleMania 3 announcing. And so they've shown that they're more than willing to bend history as like extremely far in service of their corporate interests and their corporate needs. So I there is a better version of this. It's a less accurate one, but I think in the in the situation that they're in, I do think that that's still the right move. There's a story going around the last couple of days that that Brock Lesnar's page on their website resurfaced, like reappeared, like he was part of the roster again, which people were trying to figure out what that means and, you know, all that stuff. I bet it means that he's not been charged in anything, and for them to remove it potentially triggered threats of legal action or something like that, if I had to guess. I don't know. But who knows? I don't know. Like, when we get to the point where we're like, is this page up on a website? Yes or no? Like, it's just a strange, I don't know. It's a weird thing. But I bet that, you know, this is probably the end for them when it comes to, well, if they ever do something like this again, where they really look at their, you know, they do a video game that really looks at all these old matches and look at all this stuff, like they would have to do very significant work to it to make it acceptable. And so maybe they don't do that, but they have to follow the lead of whatever the company does. So when the company, you know, they're selling access to their back catalog, they do it all the time. You can find Chris Benoit all over that footage when he was a part of that company. The thing they did is just make it so you can't search for him directly. And when he comes up in like historical context, when matches he was a part of come up in historical contexts, they never mention him by name. They say like, oh, this guy wrestled this guy in a 3-way match back at this date and this happened. And then you're like, wait, who was the other guy in the 3? Oh, right. So they've found different ways to ride around that stuff, and I wonder how they'll approach it in the future. But again, all that stuff is pretty minor compared to the totality and the actual nature of the lawsuit itself, and the stuff that's in there and how fucked up that is. So like, yeah, they should get all that right in the future, I think. And we'll see what happens. I don't know. That's going to do it for the program. Thanks everybody for watching. Come back tomorrow. We'll play, I don't know. We'll look at some Contra, probably. I'll play some more Contra because I want to get into that a little bit. The Jeff Minter story, the Digital Eclipse Llama Soft collection is out tomorrow. And so I will have more to say about that then. We'll probably take a look at that as well. So come on through. 10 a.m. Pacific time over on Twitch, and we'll take a look at some of that stuff. Maybe I'll play some 64. I feel like every game I have installed on Steam just got an update. I'm just looking over here. It's like it's all a lot of patches. That's gonna do it for me here. Come on back tomorrow or Friday. We'll rank some 8-bit Nintendo games on Friday, as we always do. And yeah, take care of yourselves. I'll see you soon.